Where are you sitting, Elise? The question came from Rebecca Shaw, my brother's boss, just as I set a plate of rosemary chicken in front of her. I looked at the table. 10 chairs, 10 guests, 10 gold-rimmed place cards in my mother's handwriting. I'm not, I said. My mother laughed from the other end of the table. It was the light, social laugh she used when a waiter brought the wrong wine. Elise already ate. No, I haven't. That stopped the silverware. Rebecca looked at me, then at my white blouse and black pants, then at Nate. An hour earlier, he had introduced me as someone helping our mother with dinner. Now the resemblance must have registered. Same dark eyebrows, same inconvenient dimple in the left cheek. "You're Nate's sister," she said. "Yes." Rebecca stood, crossed to the wall, and took the little upholstered chair my mother kept beneath the framed landscape. "Then you should sit." "There isn't a setting," Mom said. "We can find a fork." Nate leaned toward me while Rebecca pulled the chair between hers and her husband's. His smile never moved. "You're embarrassing me," he whispered. The strange part was that, until he said it, I'd still been wondering whether I should refuse the chair. 9 hours earlier, I had been standing in the specialty grocery store with 2 cartons of heavy cream under one arm when Mom called to ask if I could pick up fresh rosemary. "Not the little plastic package," she said. "The actual sprigs. I know what rosemary looks like. The good kind is by the organic mushrooms. Mom, rosemary is rosemary. That attitude is how people end up serving dried herbs to company." I shifted the phone between my shoulder and ear and looked into my cart. 2 chickens, fingerling potatoes, green beans, cream, Gruyere, lemons, salad greens, 3 bottles of wine, and the pear preserves she had insisted were essential to the cheese board. The cart looked like I was preparing to feed a visiting ambassador. "Did you find the napkins?" she asked. "I found ivory." I said cream. They're paper napkins. The distinction may not survive contact with gravy. "Elise, I'm getting them." She exhaled, satisfied. "You're saving my life." That was one of Mom's favorite expressions. I had saved her life by locating a discontinued lipstick, resetting the router, and bringing deviled eggs after Aunt Marlene arrived at Easter with what turned out to be an empty casserole carrier. Apparently, Death followed Carol Warren closely but had very low standards. At checkout, Mom's credit card was declined. The cashier was a college-aged guy with a silver ring through his eyebrow and the patient expression of someone pretending not to hear a family argument over speakerphone. "Try it again," Mom said. I did. "Well, that's impossible. It says declined. Read me the number you entered." "I didn't enter a number. I inserted the card." "Did you insert it correctly?" I looked at the cashier. "She thinks I'm trying to put it in sideways." He pressed his lips together. "Mom told me to use my card and promised Dennis would reimburse me that evening. The total was $312.47. I watched it leave the checking account where I was slowly rebuilding the money for my townhouse roof. The roof had developed a brown stain above the upstairs hallway after a March storm. It wasn't leaking yet, according to the contractor. It was thinking about leaking, which was apparently a stage roofs went through before financial violence. I had been scheduled for an overtime shift that Saturday at the rehabilitation hospital. 10 hours of coordinating discharge plans for people whose relatives thought home care meant somebody else would appear at home and provide care. The overtime would have covered nearly half the roofing deposit. Then Mom had called Thursday night. "I hate to ask," she began, with the confidence of someone who did not hate to ask at all. Her shoulder was acting up. Nate's promotion dinner had grown from 6 people to 10. She had planned too ambitious a menu. Could I possibly switch my shift? "It's not just a party," she said. "Rebecca Shaw is coming." I knew who Rebecca was. For 3 years, Nate had spoken her name with the reverence other people reserved for surgeons and difficult restaurant reservations. Rebecca had hired him, mentored him, and selected him for regional operations manager over 2 people with more seniority. "You understand how much this matters," Mom said. I understood that Nate had already received the promotion. Still, I traded the shift. By 11 that morning, I was unloading groceries in my parents' driveway. Dad opened the garage door before I reached it and stood there in boat shoes and a pale blue sweater, looking like he had dressed for an advertisement about cholesterol medication. "There she is," he said. "The cavalry. The cavalry wants reimbursement." He took one bag and left me with 6. "Your mother's upstairs." "Of course she is." Her shoulder. Mom's shoulder had bothered her intermittently for years. It grew significantly worse around Thanksgiving, Christmas, and any event requiring more than one serving dish. She appeared 15 minutes later, wearing linen pants and carrying a clipboard in the allegedly impaired hand. "I'm not helpless," she said when she caught me looking at it. "I didn't say you were. You made a face. This is just my face." She kissed my cheek, then immediately began taking items out of the bags. "Those pears are too ripe." "You told me ripe." I said ready. Dad backed quietly out of the kitchen with the wine. I had grown up in that room. The oak cabinets were darker near the handles, and one of the floor tiles beside the dishwasher had been cracked since Nate dropped a frozen turkey on it when he was 19. Mom had blamed me for leaving it near the edge of the freezer. She started directing traffic: chickens in the sink, potatoes on the island, cheese in the refrigerator, except the brie, which needed to breathe. Every few minutes she rolled her shoulder and winced, but the pain did not prevent her from rearranging the parsley I had chopped. At noon, Nate came through the back door in running clothes, glowing with sweat and optimism. "It smells incredible." "That would be the lunch you're not getting," I said. He grinned and tried to steal a pear slice from the cutting board. I slapped his hand with a dish towel. "Some things never change," Mom said fondly. What she meant was Nate stole things and I stopped him. He kissed her temple. "How's the shoulder?" "I'll survive." He looked at me. "Thanks for doing this, Ellie." Nobody except Nate called me Ellie. He knew I disliked it, which was why he used it whenever he wanted to make us sound close. "You can thank me by zesting 6 lemons. I just ran 8 miles. Then you're warmed up." He opened the refrigerator instead. "I've got a shower," and Rebecca moved the cocktail time up to 5:30. Mom's clipboard snapped upward. "What?" she texted this morning. "And you're telling us now?" I forgot. It's only half an hour. Half an hour is the difference between composed and frantic. Nate gave me the look he had used since childhood whenever Mom's anxiety became inconvenient. It said, "Help me get out of this." Usually I did. "Go shower," I told him, "but come back down by 1. He pointed at me as though I had granted him parole. "You're the best." He did not come back down by 1. At 1:30, Mom asked me to iron the table runner because Dad had done it badly. At 2, Dad was sent to collect ice, although the freezer contained an automatic ice maker. At 2:15, Mom decided the downstairs bathroom needed better hand towels. I cooked, cleaned, tied bundles of herbs, and listened to the soft thud of Nate's music through the ceiling. "You know I have my own house, right?" I asked Mom as I whisked cream sauce. "Of course I do. Just checking." I was starting to think I'd hallucinated the mortgage. "You're tense today." I gave up a 10-hour shift. "And we appreciate it, do we?" She looked genuinely hurt. That was Mom's most effective response. Anger I could push against. Hurt turned every boundary into a weapon I had used on her. "This is a milestone for your brother," she said. "There will be other shifts. And other roofs, probably. Dennis will pay you tonight." That wasn't what I meant, but arguing about it would only make me sound petty, even to myself. I turned back to the stove. At 3, I carried glassware into the dining room. The table looked beautiful. Mom was good at making things look effortless after distributing the effort among other people. White hydrangeas sat low enough not to block conversation. The candles were unscented because Rebecca disliked competing fragrances at dinner. Gold place cards rested above each plate. I read them as I set down the glasses. Rebecca Shaw, Martin Shaw, Tom Alvarez, Jill Alvarez, Samuel Reed, Nate Warren, Carol Warren, Dennis Warren. There were 2 more names, a couple from Nate's department I had met once at his company picnic. I counted again. 10 plates, 10 cards. For a second, I thought Mom had placed me at the kitchen end of the table and forgotten the card. Then I noticed there was no kitchen end anymore. She had removed the narrow chair that normally sat between Dad and the sideboard. Mom? She appeared in the doorway carrying 2 candlesticks. Those are water glasses. Wine goes on the right. Where am I sitting? She glanced at the table. Not confused, exactly. More like I had asked where we stored the vacuum. Oh, we need to talk about that. My stomach tightened. That's usually a sentence people say before they tell you something they already decided. The server canceled. What server? The woman Jill recommended. She woke up sick. You hired a server? Well, I tried to. This isn't the sort of dinner where people should be passing heavy platters. I waited. Mom set down the candlesticks and adjusted one until it was perfectly straight. I put clothes for you in the guest room. It took me a moment to understand. You want me to serve dinner. Not serve. Just bring things in and keep an eye on the wine. In serving clothes, black pants and a white blouse are hardly a uniform. Then why can't I wear what I brought? Elise, please don't make the phrasing the issue. I laughed once because there was no safe answer to that. She stepped closer and lowered her voice. Your father needs to stay at the table with Martin. I need to make sure Rebecca feels welcome. Nate obviously can't be running back and forth to the kitchen at his own celebration. Obviously. You're so good at this kind of thing. There it was. The compliment that closed like a handcuff. I looked at the place cards again. They hadn't been written that morning. The ink was dry, the edges were aligned. Mom had known before I bought the groceries, before I gave up my shift, maybe before she called me Thursday night. Was there ever a place for me at this table? Her silence lasted less than 2 seconds. It was enough. Mom picked up one of the water glasses and polished an invisible mark with her thumb. We didn't know the final number until yesterday. You knew there were 10 guests. Yes, and you knew the table seats 10. The table can seat 12 if we squeeze, but that would look cluttered. So the clutter you removed was me. Her mouth tightened. That's not fair. I almost admired the maneuver. Mom had left me out of my own brother's celebration, but my tone was the emergency. Did Nate know? She picked up another glass. Mom. We discussed the logistics. Did he know? Yes, but he thought the server was coming. We all did. And when the server canceled, we adjusted. No, you adjusted me. She set the glass down too firmly. What would you like me to do, Elise? Call everyone and say dinner is canceled because my daughter refuses to carry plates 20 feet. I'd like to be treated like your daughter. That is exactly why I knew I could ask you. A door opened upstairs. Nate came down, freshly showered, smelling like cedar and expensive optimism. He wore gray slacks and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled once at the forearms. Mom immediately forgot our conversation long enough to straighten his collar. Your blue jacket, she said. Not the charcoal. I was going to wear the charcoal. The blue makes you look more approachable. I'm already approachable. Not in the charcoal. He saw my face over her shoulder. What happened? She found out about dinner, Mom said. Dinner has been the main thing happening all day. The seating. His eyes shifted to the place cards. That was all I needed. No surprise, no confusion. Just the quick mental movement of someone who had hoped to leave the room before a problem arrived. You knew, I said. He rubbed the back of his neck. I knew the table was full. You knew I wasn't a guest. I thought they hired somebody. So who did you think I was cooking for? Everyone. Us. I don't know, Ellie. Mom said you were helping. I gave up a shift to help, and I appreciate it. Mom folded her arms. She's decided appreciation isn't enough. Nate gave her a warning look, not because she was being cruel, but because she was being strategically unhelpful. Then he came toward me. Look, I get why it feels bad. It doesn't feel bad. It is bad. Okay, it is bad. But Rebecca is coming in 2 hours, and there's no time to reorganize everything. Put another chair at the table. Mom says it'll be too tight. Then you serve. He laughed before he realized I wasn't joking. This is my promotion dinner. I'm aware. It's been mentioned. He lowered his voice. This isn't just dinner for me. Rebecca's going to be watching how I handle myself with Tom and Sam. There's a whole restructuring happening next quarter. You already got promoted. A title doesn't mean you stop proving you deserve it." Behind him, Mom nodded as if he had quoted Churchill. I said, "And me carrying your gravy proves that? You know what I mean." "I really don't." Dad came in from the garage holding 2 bags of ice and stopped when he felt the room. Dad could detect conflict the way some people detected gas leaks. His first instinct was always to find a window. "What did I miss?" "Elise doesn't want to help with dinner," Mom said. I turned to her. "That is a spectacularly dishonest sentence." Dad set the ice on the floor. "Carol." "What?" "She doesn't. She just cooked the dinner," he said. The small defense startled all of us, including him. "Thank you," I said. Then he ruined it. "But we are in a bind, honey. There was the Dennis Warren method. Recognize the injury, then recommend I lie still so everyone could step over me safely. He offered to make it up to me. Mom promised we would have a family dinner the following weekend, just us, as though tonight's people were visiting diplomats rather than Nate's co-workers and their spouses. Nate said he would personally take me somewhere nice. They negotiated with a version of me who had already agreed. I should have left. I saw that clearly, even then. My purse was in the kitchen. My car was in the driveway. No one had taken my keys, but the chickens were only half done. The sauce needed to be watched. Guests would arrive and find my parents frantic, and the thought of strangers witnessing that made me uncomfortable in a way I couldn't defend. Worse, Nate looked genuinely nervous. His left thumb kept rubbing the edge of his cuff, a habit he had had since college interviews. Mom had built our whole family around that tiny movement. Nate rubbed his cuff, and the rest of us rearranged the furniture. "I'm not doing dishes," I said. Relief crossed 3 faces. "Of course not," Mom said quickly. "I mean it. I'll do them," Dad promised. Nate hugged me. I kept my arms at my sides for a second too long before hugging him back. "You're saving me," he murmured. Apparently, the family condition was hereditary. The clothes in the guest room were new. Mom had left the tags on the black pants, probably so she could return them afterward. The white blouse had a narrow ruffle down the front that made me look like a magician's assistant at a corporate retreat. I changed, folded my jeans and green sweater on the bed, and looked at myself in the full-length mirror. The blouse fit perfectly. That hurt more than if it hadn't. At 5:20, Mom lit the candles. Dad put on a jazz playlist and immediately turned it down when she said it sounded like a dentist's office. Nate walked from room to room with a drink he barely touched. The first guests were Tom and Jill Alvarez. Tom worked with Nate. Jill had apparently recommended the 6 server. She handed Mom a bottle of wine and apologized 3 times. "Thank goodness your helper was available," she said, looking straight at me. Mom's hand landed lightly between my shoulder blades. "This is our daughter, Elise," she insisted. It was such a smooth lie that I nearly checked my own memory. I smiled because Tom and Jill were standing there with coats in their arms and had not personally oppressed me. "Nice to meet you," I said. "Oh, you're Nate's sister," Jill said. "He talks about you." Nate appeared beside us. Only good things. Then he must be talking about a different sister. Everyone laughed. Even me. That was the maddening thing about Nate. He could participate in your humiliation and still make you want to help him land the joke. Rebecca arrived last precisely at 5:30 with her husband Martin. She was in her late 50s, short silver hair, red glasses, and the kind of posture that made everyone else check theirs. Martin carried flowers and wore a green tie covered in tiny yellow bicycles. Nate's voice changed when he greeted her. Not drastically, just half a note lower, more measured. "Rebecca, Martin, welcome." "Your mother has a beautiful home," Rebecca said. Mom glowed as if she had constructed it herself. "We're so glad you could come." Nate introduced Dad, then Mom, then pointed toward me as I approached with a tray of sparkling water. "And Elise is helping my mother tonight." Rebecca took a glass. "Thank you, Elise." There was no reason she should know who I was. Nate didn't say sister. Mom didn't correct him. Neither did I. During cocktails, I moved between the kitchen and living room, close enough to hear fragments. Tom told a story about Nate calming down a hospital purchasing director whose order had been delayed. Rebecca described him as steady under pressure, and Mom said he had always been that way. I nearly dropped a bowl of olives. At 16, Nate had backed Dad's car into our closed garage door and called me before he called our parents. I had stood beside him while he cried, then lent him $600 from my summer job because he was afraid Dad would be disappointed. For years, Mom retold the incident as proof that Nate had taken responsibility. The responsibility had come out of my checking account. Elise. More ice, Mom said as I passed. She had adopted a tone I'd never heard her use with me, pleasant and impersonal. Each request came wrapped in a smile for the room. More ice, Elise. The small plates, Elise. Could you take Martin's glass, Elise? Dad drank his wine too fast. When I caught his eye, he mouthed, "Sorry." It was not useful enough to be comforting. Dinner began at 6:30. I carried in the salad while everyone found their place cards. Nate remained standing until Rebecca sat, which was the kind of detail he had probably practiced. Mom gave me a tiny nod from her chair. I served. The first course passed without disaster. The salad was good. Martin asked about the pear preserves, and Mom said, "An old family touch," although she had first seen them in a magazine on Wednesday. In the kitchen, I leaned against the counter and ate a broken piece of Gruyere over the sink. My feet hurt. I had been standing for 7 hours. Through the doorway, I heard Rebecca ask how long my parents had lived in the house. 32 years, Dad said. Both our children grew up here, Mom added. Both. The word floated into the kitchen like a joke with no punchline. I plated the chicken and potatoes. By the time I carried the first 2 dishes into the dining room, Nate was talking about the promotion. "I've had good examples," he said. "My parents never believed any task was beneath anyone. If something needed doing, you did it." Dad stared into his wine. I set a plate in front of Rebecca. She looked up at me. Not past me. At me. "Where are you sitting, Elise?" The scene happened almost exactly as I would replay it later, except memory sharpened the silence. In the room, there were small sounds. The jazz from the living room, a fork touching china, the click of the heating vent. When Mom claimed I had eaten, I could have agreed. Instead, I heard myself say, "No, I haven't." Rebecca pulled the upholstered chair from the wall. Martin immediately shifted his own chair to make room. Jill reached for the stack of dessert forks on the sideboard. "There," Rebecca said. "We're building a place setting already." Mom's cheeks had gone pink. Elise is in the middle of serving. "I think we can pass our own plates," Rebecca said. There was nothing sharp in her voice. That made it impossible to accuse her of being rude. Nate whispered, "You're embarrassing me." I looked at him. Really looked. His eyes were pleading. His smile was still arranged for the table. He wanted me to save him from the awkwardness of my existence. I set down the serving platter. Then I sat beside his boss. The chair was lower than the dining chairs, so I sat 3 inches beneath everyone else, like a relative invited from the children's table. Martin handed me a folded napkin. "Thank you. You're welcome." He glanced toward the kitchen. "Do you need a plate? I could probably use one." Jill passed down a clean dinner plate. Tom contributed a knife, Samuel found a spoon, and within 30 seconds, my brother's senior colleagues had assembled a place for me out of spare pieces while my family watched. Rebecca served chicken onto my plate. I nearly told her I could do it myself. That was how deeply the training went. Someone could be in the process of rescuing me from serving dinner, and my first instinct was to make the rescue less work for her. Mom gave a brittle little laugh. "Well, this is cozy." "It is," Martin said cheerfully. "I like a full table." He seemed to mean it. I wondered if Rebecca had brought him because his pleasantness counterbalanced the red glasses and the direct eye contact. Nate reached for his water, missed it slightly, and turned the movement into an adjustment of his place card. Rebecca cut into the chicken. "This is excellent, Carol. Thank you." "Elise made it," Dad said. Mom looked at him. Dad cleared his throat and added, "Carol chose the recipe." "I bought the magazine," Mom said. I took a bite before anyone could ask me to resolve the question of authorship. The chicken was a little drier than I wanted. It had spent too long warming while I served the salad. Nobody else seemed to notice. Rebecca looked at me. "Do you cook often?" "Only when properly threatened." Martin laughed. Mom said, "Elise has always been very domestic. I almost choked on a potato. I coordinate discharges at a rehabilitation hospital," I said. There was a beat of silence. Tom leaned forward. "Which one?" "Winston Memorial." "I know Winston. That's a tough job. It can be." "Wait," Jill said. "You're the person dealing with insurance and equipment and family training, and transportation, home services, pharmacy problems, unavailable beds, people who decide at 4:50 that they live on the third floor with no elevator." Rebecca smiled. "So you solve impossible arrangements all day, then come here and cook for 10 people. 11, Martin said. "We're 11 now." 11, she corrected. Mom lifted her wine. "Elise likes to stay busy." It was not technically untrue. I did like being useful. There was satisfaction in taking a crowded mess and finding the clean path through it. I liked hearing the relief in a patient's voice when I told them the wheelchair had arrived or the home nurse had confirmed. I liked feeding people. I liked being the person my father trusted when he couldn't understand a medical portal. The problem was that my family had confused liking to help with having no right to refuse. "I like my work," I said. "I also like sitting down." Tom covered a cough with his napkin. Nate's jaw tightened. Rebecca did not look at him. "How long have you been at Winston?" 9 years. "She bought a house by herself last year," Dad said. That surprised me even more than the chicken credit. Dad sounded proud. "A townhouse," Mom clarified. "It needs a little work." "Most houses do," Martin said. "The roof is thinking about leaking," I told him. He pointed his fork at me. "That's the most expensive kind of thinking." I laughed. It came out more naturally than I wanted. For a few minutes, I forgot to monitor my mother's face. Rebecca asked which neighborhood I lived in. Jill knew the coffee shop at the corner. Samuel had once spent 6 hours at Winston after a cycling accident and swore he could still smell the lemon disinfectant. The conversation moved easily, not because I was dazzling, but because I was a person with ordinary things to say. Across the table, Nate watched his dinner become a dinner. He found an opening after Tom mentioned a supply delay. "That's actually something I want to address in the new role," Nate said. "Our regional communication is too reactive." Rebecca turned back to him. "What would you change?" He began explaining a plan for a centralized escalation process. I knew enough from years of listening to him talk that the idea was good. Nate was good at his job. That complicated everything. It would have been easier if he were an incompetent little prince coasting on charm, but he worked hard, remembered names, and could persuade people without making them feel persuaded. He was also eating food I had cooked while I sat in a chair dragged from the wall. Both things were true. As Nate spoke, some of the stiffness left him. He stopped touching his cuff. He asked Tom a question, drew Samuel in, and disagreed with Rebecca without becoming defensive. She challenged one of his assumptions, and he adjusted. For a moment, I saw what she saw in him. Then Mom reached behind Martin's chair and touched my shoulder. "The sauce," she murmured. I looked toward the kitchen. The cream sauce was still in a warmed pitcher beside the stove. I had forgotten to bring it. Before I could stand, Martin said, "I'll get it." "No, no," Mom said quickly. "You're a guest." "So is Elise," he said. The words were gentle. Mom reacted as though he had slapped the table. "I can get it," Dad said. He rose, bumped his knee, and carried the pitcher back with a dish towel wrapped around the handle, like someone transporting evidence. When he sat, he gave me a small, almost boyish smile. I smiled back despite myself. Dinner might have limped to a peaceful end if Nate had not given his toast. Mom prompted it after the plates were cleared, not by me. We passed them hand to hand until Dad stacked them on the sideboard. "Nate," she said, "weren't you going to say something?" He looked annoyed for half a second, then stood. I didn't prepare a speech. You prepared too, I said. He shot me a look. A few people laughed. He lifted his glass. I'll keep it short. I'm grateful to Rebecca for taking a chance on me 3 years ago, and to Tom and Sam for all the support, and I'm grateful to my parents. Mom's face softened. They taught me that you show up, that you work hard, take care of your people, and never act like a task is beneath you. That's what I want to bring to this job. The speech was polished enough that I knew this was version 2. Everyone raised their glasses. I raised mine too because not doing it would have created another scene. Rebecca took a sip, then said, "That last part is especially important." Nate nodded. Absolutely. Leadership becomes visible in small moments. Her tone was neutral. She could have been agreeing with him. Maybe she was. But Nate's ears went red. Mom jumped in. He's always had a natural instinct for it. I've seen that, Rebecca said. I've also seen him learn, which matters more. That was not a compliment Mom could display on the mantel, so she smiled without understanding what to do with it. Dessert was pear tart with whipped cream. I had made the tart before starting the chicken, but Mom had arranged the pear slices, so she referred to it as ours. Dad brought it in. He held the tart in both hands while I watched from my low chair. The whipped cream remained in the kitchen, then emerged 2 minutes later in a soup bowl because he could not find the glass serving dish. Mom stared at the bowl. It tastes the same, Rebecca said. Dad served the first slice sideways. The crust broke. Jill got an enormous piece, Samuel got a thin one, and Martin slid partly off his plate. Nothing terrible happened. That may have been the most dangerous lesson of the night. The food still tasted good. People passed the whipped cream. Martin told a story about the first dinner he cooked for Rebecca, involving a smoke detector and a frozen lasagna. Everyone laughed. The evening survived without one competent woman moving invisibly around its edges. Mom did not. She became brighter and brighter, laughing too loudly and asking Rebecca questions without waiting for the full answer. Whenever her eyes reached me, the brightness disappeared. After coffee, the guests began leaving. Tom shook Nate's hand and slapped his shoulder. Jill thanked Mom, then thanked me separately. Rebecca was last. She hugged Mom, shook Dad's hand, and turned to Nate. Enjoy tonight. Monday gets busy. I'm ready, I know. Then she came to me. It was lovely meeting you, Elise. You too. She did not apologize for my family or tell me what I deserved. She just squeezed my hand once and left with Martin. The front door closed. Mom kept her smile in place until the headlights moved across the living room wall. Then she turned. What was that? Dad began gathering glasses. Let's clean up first. No, I want to know what that was. I looked down at my borrowed blouse. A drop of sauce had landed near the bottom ruffle. You'll have to narrow it down. You contradicted me in front of everyone. You told them I'd already eaten. You could have gone along with it. I had gone along with quite a lot by then. Nate loosened his collar. Why did you have to say it like that? Like what? No, I haven't. You made it sound like we were starving you. I stated 3 words of fact. You knew how it would look. I stared at him. That's the part you're upset about? Rebecca noticed. Rebecca noticed because you introduced your sister as hired help without the hiring. I said you were helping Mom. You didn't say who I was. Because it wasn't relevant in the moment. Mom stepped between us, as if protecting him from the sight of me. He was nervous. So was I. Apparently only one of us gets a support staff. Dad put down a glass. Nobody thinks of you as staff. I pointed toward the guest room. You bought me a uniform. It was a blouse, Mom snapped. It still has the tag on it. Because I wasn't sure it would fit, but you were sure enough to buy my size. Her face changed, just slightly. She had known, not only that afternoon, before the server canceled, before the groceries, possibly before the invitation. Maybe the server had been real. Maybe she hadn't. It no longer mattered. Mom folded her arms. I will not be made into a villain in my own home after everything I've done for you. There was so much history packed into that sentence that I couldn't find a clean place to begin. The piano lessons she drove me to, the casseroles after my engagement ended, the week she spent helping me unpack the townhouse, labeling every box in handwriting I could recognize across a room. She had loved me. She had also done this. Nate stepped closer. His voice softened, which meant he wanted something. "I need you to send Rebecca a message." I laughed. "About the chicken? Just say there was a misunderstanding. Tell her you were supposed to be part of the dinner, but you offered to help when the server canceled. Was I supposed to be part of the dinner?" He looked at Mom. "That's not the point," he said. "It seems central. You don't understand the position you put me in." I reached into the kitchen for my purse. Mom followed. "Where are you going?" "Home." "What about the dishes?" The question escaped before she could stop it. All four of us heard it. Dad closed his eyes. I took my keys from the side pocket of my purse. "I was never here, remember? The dishes shouldn't even know my name." "Elise," Mom said, but her voice had lost its authority. I walked out in the white blouse and black pants, leaving my own clothes folded on the guest room bed. Behind me, through the still open door, I heard a glass break. For once, I kept walking. I drove home with the top button of the blouse digging into my throat. At the first red light, I tore off the tag from the pants. It had been scratching the small of my back all evening, a tiny cardboard reminder that Mom intended to return the costume after using me in it. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. Nate. I let it ring. He called again before I reached the next intersection, then a third time while I was turning into my neighborhood. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I had 2 texts from him, one from Mom and a missed call from Dad. "Nate, please don't make this bigger than it is. Nate, 2 minutes later. I need to know you're not contacting Rebecca." Mom, "Your father cut his hand cleaning up the glass. That one was impressive. No accusation, no request, just a small, bloody object placed carefully in my path." I sat in the dark car with my hands on the steering wheel. The townhouse across from mine had blue lights strung around the porch, even though it was April. The man who lived there changed them for every season: orange in October, red and green in December, blue when there was no recognized lighting holiday. They blinked cheerfully against my windshield. My phone rang again. "Dad." I answered. "Are you okay?" I asked. There was a pause. "I'm fine. How bad is the cut?" "What cut?" I closed my eyes. "Oh, that. Nothing. Your mother worries." "Does she?" He lowered his voice. In the background, I could hear dishes knocking together. "She's upset." "So am I." "I know, honey. Do you?" Another pause. Dad's silences had different textures. This one meant he knew there was a correct answer, but hoped time would supply it. "We all handled tonight badly," he said. That was Dad's preferred unit of responsibility. Everyone. If the house caught fire, he would say we had all made some unfortunate choices near the stove. "I handled dinner," I said. "You handled one tart. You know what I mean." "I do. That's the problem." He sighed. "Could you call your mother tomorrow?" "She has my number." "Come on, Elise." "No." The word sounded unnatural in my mouth, too small to carry the weight I put on it. Dad went quiet. I said, "Are my clothes still in the guest room? I'll bring them by." "Thank you." "And the grocery money." I didn't forget. I had. That irritated me too. After we hung up, I carried my purse inside and locked the door. My house smelled faintly like the lemon candle I'd burned the night before. One lamp was on in the living room because I hated coming home to total darkness. The contractor's estimate sat on the coffee table beneath a mug with a dried ring of tea in it. It was not a beautiful house yet. The carpet upstairs was older than some of my coworkers. The kitchen cabinets had been painted gray by someone who believed hinges should also be painted gray, but every object in it had stayed where I left it. No one had moved my chair to make room for a more important person. I went upstairs and peeled off the blouse. The sauce stain had dried into a pale crescent near the bottom ruffle. I put the blouse and pants in a shopping bag, then changed into sweatpants and an old Winston Memorial t-shirt. My phone buzzed on the bathroom counter. Mom had written a longer message. I hope when you calm down you'll understand that tonight was never about excluding you. It was about supporting your brother. I'm sorry you chose to interpret our need for help as an insult. Rebecca was clearly uncomfortable, and Nate now has to deal with that at work. We all make sacrifices for family. I read it twice. Then I typed, "What sacrifice did Nate make tonight?" I stared at the words for several seconds before deleting them. Not because they were wrong, because I knew what would happen. Mom would list every difficult thing Nate had ever endured, from a delayed flight to the time he had worked through a sinus infection. I would respond. She would cry. Dad would call. By midnight, we would be debating whether I had smiled enough at Thanksgiving 3 years ago. I put the phone face down. Sleep came in scraps. Around 2, I woke convinced I had forgotten the cream sauce. At 3:30, I dreamed I was carrying plates down an endless hallway, while doors closed ahead of me. At 6, my phone alarm went off, even though it was Sunday. Dad arrived at 10 with my clothes folded inside a department store bag and an envelope containing $320 in cash. "You overpaid me. Keep it. I'm not keeping $7.53 as emotional damages." His mouth twitched. "Your mother rounded." Of course she did. He stood on my front step in the same boat shoes from the day before, hands in his jacket pockets. Dad owned other shoes. I had seen them. But whenever he approached a difficult family conversation, he dressed as if he might need to escape by sailboat. "Coffee?" I asked. Relief softened his whole body. That'd be good. He followed me into the kitchen and sat at the small table by the window. I started the machine. Usually, Dad would have commented on the cabinet hinges or asked if I had checked the furnace filter. Instead, he studied the fruit bowl. "Your mother didn't sleep," he said. "Neither did I." "She feels terrible." "What does she feel terrible about?" He looked up. "Everything that happened." "That's vague." "Elise." "No, I'm asking. Does she feel terrible that I was excluded? Or does she feel terrible that someone noticed?" The coffee machine sputtered behind me. Dad rubbed his hands together. "She shouldn't have said you already ate." "That's the part?" "No, because she also shouldn't have asked me to serve in the first place. She panicked when the woman canceled. There was never a place card for me. She had already done the seating." "When?" He looked at the fruit bowl again. I had spent enough years translating Dad's silences to understand. "There was never a server," I said. "I didn't say that. You didn't have to. She spoke to someone. Jill's person. It didn't work out." "When did it not work out?" "I don't know all the details. You live there. That doesn't mean I'm involved in every decision. It came out defensive, but there was something almost sad underneath." Dad had spent so long making himself uninvolved that his ignorance had become a kind of shelter. I poured 2 cups and put his in front of him. "Did you know I wasn't sitting at the table?" "Not until Friday, so you knew before I bought the groceries." He wrapped both hands around the cup. "I thought you knew." That sentence had protected more cowards than any sentence in the English language. I sat across from him. "Did it seem like something I would agree to? You help with parties. I help host. I don't dress like staff while my brother pretends not to recognize me. He recognized you. You know what I mean." He flinched slightly at hearing his own phrase returned. "I should have said something," he admitted. "Yes. I'm sorry." The apology landed strangely. It was what I wanted, but it also opened the floor beneath it. If Dad knew he should have said something, then he had seen what was happening. I had preferred imagining him oblivious. He took a sip of coffee. "Your mother owes you an apology, too." "She does. She'll get there." "When?" "You know how she is." "Yes, I do." He leaned back. "Sometimes, if you give her a little room, I gave her an entire dining room." Dad shut his eyes for a second. "That was funny. I'm trying not to encourage you." Despite myself, I smiled. That was another complication. Dad could fail me and still be Dad. He could make me laugh while asking me to accept less than I deserved. He reached across the table. "Come over this afternoon. Just for an hour. We'll talk." No. His hand remained between us. "Honey, families have bad nights. I'm not staying away because of one bad night. What does that mean?" I stood and went to the ceramic bowl beside the refrigerator. It held spare change, takeout menus, and the keys I used most often. My parents' house key had a red rubber cover because Mom said it was easier to identify in an emergency. There had been many emergencies. A package arrived early. Dad couldn't find his passport. Mom left the oven on and remembered while she was at a hair appointment. Nate needed his old birth certificate from the filing cabinet upstairs. None of them involved fire, blood, or anyone else's definition of emergency. I slid the key off my ring. Dad watched me place it on the table. "What are you doing?" "I don't want to be the automatic answer anymore. It's a key. It's a job." He touched the red cover with one finger. "This feels dramatic." So did eating Gruyere over the sink while 10 people praised my brother for showing up. He pulled his hand back. "I'm not cutting you off," I said. "I'm not disowning anyone. I'm giving back the key. What if we need you? You can call me. And if you don't answer, then you'll have to figure out something else." He looked genuinely unsettled, which told me how much that possibility had never occurred to him. When he left, he took the red key and the stained blouse. He hugged me on the porch for a long time. "Call your mother," he said into my hair. "No." He nodded as if I had agreed to consider it. Monday morning, I arrived at Winston to find a 47-year-old man in room 318, insisting he could go home without the walker his physical therapist had ordered. "My hallway is narrow," he told me. "The walker folds. I don't like how it looks. It looks like you don't want to fall." He stared at me. "My sister can help. Does your sister know that? She knows everything." I almost laughed. His sister, when I called, did not know he was being discharged that day, did not know he needed assistance getting into the shower, and lived an hour away. "I love him," she said, exhausted before the work had even begun. "But he tells people I'll do things, and then I look like a monster when I can't." I looked through the glass panel at her brother sitting on the edge of the bed, offended by gravity. "No," I said, "you don't." We arranged temporary home services and transportation that did not depend on his sister abandoning her job. It took 3 hours, 7 calls, and 1 argument with an insurance representative. By lunch, I had solved 3 other problems and eaten half a granola bar over my keyboard. My family group chat had accumulated 14 messages. Mom had posted a photograph from dinner. Nate stood between her and Dad in his blue jacket. The dining table glowed behind them, candles lit, flowers perfect. I wasn't in the picture. I had probably been whisking the sauce when it was taken. Aunt Marlene had written, "Beautiful family, so proud of Nate." Mom responded with 3 hearts. Then came a message addressed to me. "Elise, please confirm you can take your father to cardiology Thursday. Appointment is at 3:15, but they want him there by 2:45. The appointment had been on the shared calendar for 2 months. I had arranged my schedule around it before the dinner. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Dad could drive. He disliked the hospital parking garage, and Mom disliked waiting rooms, so I had become the plan without anyone asking me. I wrote, "I'm not available. Dad will need to drive himself or reschedule." The typing dots appeared immediately. "Mom, you already took off." Me, "I changed my schedule." That wasn't true yet, but it would be. Mom, "Over 1 argument?" Nate, "Can we not do this in the family chat?" Aunt Marlene, "I'm staying out of it." She did not leave the chat. Dad sent me a private message. "I can drive myself. It's okay." Before I could answer, Mom posted, "Apparently, this is how Elise wants things now." I looked at the dinner photograph again. At Nate's blue jacket, Mom's polished smile, Dad's hand resting uneasily on the back of an empty chair. Then I opened the calendar settings and removed myself as manager. Every appointment, birthday reminder, medication refill, dinner reservation, and recurring Sunday lunch remained. I didn't delete a thing. I simply stopped being responsible for remembering it. 3 minutes later, Mom called. I let it ring. The call became a voicemail, then another call, then a second voicemail. I listened to neither until after work. Mom's first message lasted 42 seconds. Elise, I don't know what you think you accomplished by removing yourself from the calendar. Your father and I are perfectly capable of keeping our own appointments. The calendar was for everyone's convenience, including yours. You created it, by the way. Nobody forced you. Call me. The second lasted 1 minute and 11 seconds, and I just saw your message about Thursday. I'm extremely disappointed. Your father doesn't enjoy driving downtown, and you know the parking situation at that hospital. If this is about money, we reimbursed you. If it's about Saturday, we've already said the evening could have been handled better. I refuse to beg my own daughter to care about this family. I sat in my car in the employee lot and listened to both again. Not because they contained anything new, because I had spent years searching Mom's words for the hidden sentence that would prove she understood me. I treated every pause like a locked drawer. There was no drawer. She was angry that the furniture had moved. My supervisor, Denise, had been delighted when I offered to take back my Thursday afternoon. You sure? She asked. You've had that blocked forever. My plans changed. You want Saturday overtime too? Melanie's trying to get rid of hers. A week earlier, I would have heard Mom's voice before answering. We're having Sunday lunch. Your father wanted help moving the patio furniture. Nate might stop by. Yes, I said. I'll take it. By Wednesday, my phone had become a small museum of family displeasure. Aunt Marlene texted to ask if I was doing okay emotionally. That phrase meant Mom had called her. I replied, I'm okay emotionally, she responded. Your mother says you're having a difficult time with Nate's promotion. I stared at it long enough for my screen to dim. Then I wrote, my difficult time was carrying his dinner while he sat down. The typing dots appeared, vanished, and appeared again. Aunt Marlene. Carol didn't mention that part. Of course she hadn't. At lunch, Dad called to ask whether I remembered the name of his cardiologist. It's on the calendar. I know. I'm looking at it. Then why are you asking me? I just wanted to make sure it was still Dr. Patel. It is, and the garage is the one on 7th. The address is in the appointment. I see that. We sat in silence. Dad had not needed the name. He had needed to check whether I would still answer. How's work? He asked. Busy. Your mother made meatloaf last night. That's exciting. It was a little dry. I smiled in spite of myself. Use ketchup. She considers that criticism. She considers chewing criticism. He laughed, then lowered his voice, even though Mom was probably nowhere near him. I'm sorry things are like this. So am I. Sunday lunch? No, you didn't even ask what we're having. Is it meatloaf? He laughed again. Pot roast. Still no. The laugh faded, but he didn't push. Okay. Thursday afternoon, Dad drove himself downtown. He texted me from the parking garage. Level 4, blue section. Writing it here so I remember. I sent him a thumbs up. 10 minutes later, found elevator. This place is designed by lunatics. I wrote, follow signs to building B. He responded, I know. He did know. He had been there 6 times. I put my phone away. At 4:30, he sent a photograph of his parking stub and the message, heart still present. Dr. Patel says everything looks good. Relief moved through me so quickly it was almost pain. I called him before I could decide whether calling counted as surrender. He answered with, survived. I heard. How was parking? Fine. Actually, easier than when you drive. You always use the garage by the emergency department. Because you told me you preferred it. I don't remember saying that. You have said it every visit. Well, I've changed my mind. I laughed. Congratulations on your growth. He was quiet for a moment. You know, I can do things. I know you can. Sometimes it's just easier when you do them. There it was. Not an accusation, not even manipulation exactly, a plain description of the arrangement. I know, I said. That night, Nate emailed me a presentation titled Centralized Regional Escalation, 90-Day Implementation, no message, no request. Just the file, as if the old machinery might restart if he fed something into it. 3 minutes later, he texted, "Can you give this a quick pass? Mostly wording. Need it tomorrow morning." I wrote, "No." His response came immediately. "Seriously?" "Yes. This is work. It has nothing to do with Mom." "Then ask someone at work. You're better at making things sound human." Any other week, that would have worked. It was flattering in the exact place I was vulnerable. Nate knew I was good at taking his corporate language and removing phrases like cross-functional optimization until actual people could understand it. I typed, "I'm not available." He called. I considered ignoring him, but I was tired of being spoken about through other people. "What?" I answered. "Did you even open it?" "No. It would take you 20 minutes. Then it should take you 40. He exhaled hard. "You've helped me with presentations before." "Yes. And I've helped you with things. Name one." The silence hurt us both. Then he said, "I painted your living room." He had. For 4 hours. He'd arrived late, left early, and spent 40 minutes taking a work call on my porch, but he had painted one full wall and most of another. "You did," I said. "So don't act like this is completely one-sided. I'm not saying you've never done anything for me. That's exactly what you're saying." "No, I'm saying I'm not reviewing your presentation tonight because I let you serve dinner." The words came out flat and ugly. "You didn't let me, Nate. You expected me to. I didn't plan the dinner. You knew the seating." Friday. I found out Friday. "And what did you say?" He went quiet. "What did you say when you found out I wasn't sitting with you?" I had other things on my mind. "That's what you always have." He started pacing. I could hear the change in his breathing and the soft rhythm of footsteps through the phone. Rebecca asked me Monday if everything was okay with my family. My stomach tightened, though I hated that it did. "What did you tell her?" "That it was a misunderstanding." "Was it?" "I told her the server canceled and you stepped in." "That's not what happened." "It basically is." "No, it basically isn't. What do you want me to say? That my mother made a seating chart that hurt your feelings?" I looked at the contractor's estimate on my table. I had moved it 3 times that week without doing anything about it. I want you to stop making your comfort the definition of truth. Oh, come on. You asked why I won't review the presentation. That's why. He gave a short, disbelieving laugh. "So you're going to punish my career. You wrote a toast about doing every task. That's cheap. Then do this one." I hung up. My hands shook afterward. I didn't feel powerful. I felt like I had stepped off a curb and discovered the street was much farther down than expected. At 9, Priya called. She and Nate had been engaged for 6 months. Priya was an architect with beautiful blunt-cut hair and a habit of bringing bakery boxes tied with real ribbon. I liked her, which made seeing her name feel like another problem I hadn't earned. "Am I being sent in?" she asked when I answered. "At least you're honest." I told him I wasn't taking sides. That usually means someone has asked you to take theirs quietly. Probably. I heard a cabinet close in the background. Priya and Nate lived together in an apartment across town. I pictured him at their dining table with the presentation open, rubbing his thumb against his cuff. "He's rewriting it himself," she said. "I'm glad to hear it. He's also furious," I assumed. Priya hesitated. "Can we get coffee tomorrow?" "Why?" "Because I'd rather not have this conversation while he's 10 feet away pretending not to listen." From somewhere behind her, Nate said, "I'm not listening." She called back, "Then stop making listening faces." I laughed before I could stop myself. "Tomorrow," she said. 6? That place near the courthouse? "Fine. Thank you. Don't thank me yet." She lowered her voice. "For what it's worth, I think the dinner was awful." "Which part?" "The whole thing. Your mom saying you insisted. Nate not introducing you." The chair. You knew? I knew after. He told me his version. Then your dad called him and accidentally told a different version. That sounded like Dad. Did Nate tell you he wanted me to lie to Rebecca? Silence. No, she said. Ask him. The next evening, Priya was already seated when I arrived. She'd ordered my tea correctly, English breakfast, milk on the side, which felt so considerate I almost became angry at her for it. She wore a camel coat over her work clothes and looked tired. I'm not here to convince you the dinner was okay, she said as soon as I sat. Good. I'm here because this is getting out of control. It has been 6 days. Exactly. She wrapped both hands around her coffee. A square-cut sapphire shone on her left hand, the engagement ring Nate had spent 3 months choosing and 2 weeks telling everyone he had chosen without help. Your mom called me twice yesterday, Priya said. She says you're jealous of the promotion. Do you believe her? No. But I think you're angry enough to burn down more than you mean to. I sat back. I stopped managing a calendar and declined one presentation. You skipped lunch. You gave back the key. Nate thinks you're going to contact Rebecca. I'm not. I told him that. You shouldn't have had to. I know. There was that word again. Everyone knew, apparently. Knowledge was abundant. Action remained scarce. Priya stirred coffee she had not sweetened. He's scared, she said. So was I. He thinks Rebecca sees him differently now. She might. Elise. I didn't cause that. No. But you could make it easier. The old request, delivered by a new person. I looked at Priya's carefully remembered tea, her tired eyes, the sapphire on her hand. Why is it always my job to make things easier? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. For the first time since we sat down, she looked less like Nate's messenger and more like someone who had just heard the question for herself. Priya looked down at her coffee. It shouldn't be, she said finally. But you are the person who can calm this down. I'm also the person everybody is mad at, because they expect you to come back. The honesty of it caught me off guard. She lifted one shoulder. Nate's words, not mine. He said you always cool off and come back. I didn't know I had a scheduled function. He didn't mean it like that. He probably did. He just didn't hear it. Priya's thumb moved around the rim of her cup. I asked him why he didn't introduce you as his sister. What did he say? That everything was moving fast. It was a 3-word emergency. I know. And the message to Rebecca? He says he wasn't asking you to lie. He asked me to describe something that didn't happen. He thinks the original plan counts. The original plan didn't include me at the table either. Priya nodded slowly. That part he wasn't clear about. He was perfectly clear with me. She took a sip of coffee and made a face. It had gone cold. Did he finish the presentation? I asked. Yes. By himself? Her eyes shifted. I laughed without humor. Priya. I didn't rewrite it. What did you do? I cleaned up a few slides. How many? 6. Out of? 12. I leaned back. That's different, she said. I offered. Did you? He was sitting there at midnight, and I had to listen to him reading the same paragraph out loud. That's not an offer. That's acoustic warfare. She smiled despite herself. It was a terrible paragraph. I believe you. He had the ideas. He just couldn't organize them. I believe that, too. The smile disappeared. She looked down at her sapphire ring, then turned it once on her finger. I don't mind helping him, she said. I don't mind helping people either. Then where's the line? It was a fair question. That was what made it difficult. I think the line is when they stop seeing the help as something you gave, I said. When it becomes something you took away the first time you say no. Priya sat very still. At the next table, a man in a suit was breaking a muffin into perfect quarters while arguing quietly through an earpiece. The espresso machine hissed. Someone dropped a spoon. What do you want from Nate? She asked. For him to understand what he did. He apologized. He said he was sorry it felt bad. That is unfortunately his favorite kind of apology. You're marrying him. I'm aware. There was no defensiveness in it, just fatigue. I softened. I'm not asking you to choose. Everybody says that right before asking. I mean it. I like you, Priya. I like you too. And if you want to help him with presentations, help him. I just don't want my refusal turned into an attack. She nodded. We left the coffee shop together. On the sidewalk, she hugged me, which surprised us both. He did well today, she said before walking away. Rebecca liked the plan. I'm glad. That was true. I wanted Nate to succeed. I simply didn't want to be used as evidence that he had succeeded alone. Saturday morning, I went back to Winston for the overtime shift. At 11, the contractor called with an opening to repair the worst section of my roof the following week. If you can do the deposit by Monday, I can hold the crew, he said. How much? The number was exactly $40 less than I would make from the 2 shifts I had reclaimed. I looked through the office window at a gray sky gathering over the hospital roof. Hold them. After work, I bought takeout noodles and ate them on my couch while rain ticked against the upstairs windows. I kept getting up to check the brown stain in the hallway. It did not spread. My phone stayed mostly quiet. Mom had stopped calling after I declined Sunday lunch a second time. Her silence was not peaceful. It had weight. It felt like being left alone in a room where someone had just said, "Fine." Dad sent me a photo of the pot roast before it went into the oven. The meat sat in a pan surrounded by potatoes, cut into wildly different sizes. "Your mother says these are too big," he wrote. I answered, "The small ones will cook first. That doesn't help. It's not supposed to. Cut the big ones smaller." He sent back a thumbs up. Sunday afternoon, Aunt Marlene called while I was moving a bucket beneath the hallway stain, mostly for emotional comfort. "I'm not taking sides," she began. "Everyone in this family is very committed to announcing that. I'm serious." "Okay, your mother is being impossible." I waited. "You're not supposed to agree that fast," she said. I didn't say anything. You agreed silently. Aunt Marlene was Mom's older sister and the only person in the family who could irritate her without losing access to Thanksgiving. She had spent 40 years saying exactly what she thought, then acting surprised when people found it inconvenient. "She told me you humiliated Nate in front of his boss because you're unhappy with your own life," Marlene said. "That's creative." I asked what you did. She said you sat down. I did it very aggressively. I knew there had to be more. "Did Dad tell you?" Dennis said it was complicated, which is his way of lying without selecting a lie. I laughed. Marlene continued, "I told Carol if she wanted a waitress, she should have paid one. Thank you." Then she reminded me you catered my anniversary party. I made trays of lasagna for your anniversary party. I was also seated at it. You were, but only because I feared you. That's healthy. She went quiet. "How bad is the shoulder?" I asked. "Bad." The humor left the room. "What do you mean?" "She saw the orthopedic surgeon Friday." I straightened. "What surgeon?" "Dr. Klein." "The tear has gotten worse." "What tear? You didn't know?" "No." Mom had complained about her shoulder for years, but complaints were background weather. She said her shoulder was killing her while carrying grocery bags, gardening, and reaching behind the washing machine to retrieve a sock. I had never heard a diagnosis. "Marlene, she has a torn rotator cuff. Apparently, it's been getting worse for months. They want to operate." "When?" "I don't know. Sometime next month." "Why didn't she tell me?" Aunt Marlene made a small sound that meant she knew better than to answer. After we hung up, I called Mom. She answered on the second ring. "Hello?" Not Elise, not Honey. "Hello," as if I were trying to sell her extended car insurance. "Aunt Marlene says you need surgery. She had no business telling you. I'm your daughter." That didn't seem to matter this week. I closed my eyes. What did Dr. Klein say? That I have a significant tear. Full thickness? Yes. Which tendon? I don't remember. Did he give you paperwork? Of course. What's the date? It isn't scheduled yet. Why not? Because I need to know whether I'll have help. The answer slid into place so neatly, I wondered if Aunt Marlene's call had been less accidental than it seemed. "I'm asking about the medical details," I said, "and I'm telling you the practical details. I'll be in a sling. I won't be able to use my right arm properly for weeks. What did Dad say? That we'll manage. And Nate? He has a demanding new job." There it was, arriving exactly on schedule. "So do I. I didn't say you don't. You didn't have to." She exhaled. "I am not having this argument again. We never had this argument. You just informed me that Nate is unavailable. He can help, but he can't take days off whenever he wants. Neither can I. You have accumulated leave." I stood in my hallway looking at the bucket and the stain. "How do you know how much leave I have?" "You told me." Maybe I had. Mom stored facts about other people's availability the way squirrels stored nuts. "You've already decided I'll take care of you," I said. "I assumed my daughter would want to. I do want you taken care of." That is a very clinical answer. It's an honest one. "Fine. Honestly, I don't know how your father and I are supposed to manage alone. You shouldn't manage alone. We can make a schedule. We, you, Dad, me, Nate, and professional help if we need it. We cannot afford weeks of nursing care. You probably don't need nursing care for weeks. You'll need someone the first day, help with meals, rides, laundry, anything that takes both hands. The surgeon's office should give you a list. I don't need a discharge coordinator. I need a daughter. And I need a mother who asks instead of assigns." She went silent. I could hear Dad in the background saying something about the potatoes. Mom covered the phone, answered him sharply, then came back. "I have always been there for you." "I know. When your engagement ended, who stayed at your apartment for 3 nights? You did. When you bought that townhouse, who helped unpack? You did. I didn't ask whether it was convenient. No, you didn't. Then I don't understand what's happening to you." Her voice cracked slightly on the final word, not theatrically. Mom was truly hurt. She had cared for me. She had shown up with casseroles and packing tape and the yellow blanket from my childhood when I couldn't stop crying over a man I had almost married. The problem was not that her love had been fake. The problem was that she believed love created debt and she alone kept the ledger. "I will help," I said. "I'm not promising to do all of it. Nobody asked you to do all of it." "Good. Then a schedule shouldn't be a problem. I don't want strangers in my house." "Then Nate needs to take his share." "He will." "Call him." "I shouldn't have to arrange every detail of my own recovery while I'm facing surgery. You haven't scheduled it yet. I knew you would make this difficult, and I knew you would make me responsible." She hung up. I stood there with the phone against my ear, listening to nothing. An hour later, a calendar notification appeared. Mom had scheduled surgery for May 20th. Below it, she had added 3 events. Elise staying with Mom and Dad. May 20th, 30. Nate dinner/visit. May 22nd. Priya bringing casserole. May 24th. I declined the first event. Then I created a new one titled Family Recovery Planning and invited all 4 of them. Mom declined within 30 seconds. Dad accepted the invitation 2 minutes later. Priya accepted after 5. Nate marked himself tentative. At 7:30, Mom called. "You scheduled a meeting about my surgery without asking me. I invited you. You put it on the calendar. That is traditionally how invitations work. I'm the patient. Then you should probably attend." She went quiet long enough that I could hear the television in their living room. Dad was watching a baseball game. Mom hated baseball unless someone had invited her to a luxury box, at which point she developed strong opinions about pitching. "Where?" she asked. "My house." "No." The chairs hurt my back. "Your house, then." "I don't want everyone coming here and making a production out of it. It's 4 people. 5 if Priya insists on attending. I invited Priya because you assigned her a casserole." "I did not assign her. She offered." I doubted that, but Priya could speak for herself. "Sunday at 4, I said. "Your house. What am I supposed to serve?" "Nothing." "We can't have people over at 4 and not serve anything. We're not company." Mom made the small, irritated sound she used when I applied her own logic in the wrong direction. "Fine," she said, "but I'm not turning my recovery into a committee project. You already turned it into my 10-day residency. That was before I understood your position. My position is 2 nights in my own bed, apparently." She hung up without saying goodbye, but she did not decline the new invitation. The roofers came Wednesday. For 6 hours, my townhouse shook with scraping, footsteps, and occasional thuds that made me wonder whether a man had fallen into my bedroom. I worked from my kitchen table, answering hospital calls while a blue tarp covered half the roof. At noon, the foreman knocked and showed me a section of damaged decking. Good news is we caught it before the rot spread. I looked at the darkened wood. There's good news? That was it. By 5, the weak section had been replaced. The shingles matched closely enough, and the brown stain in my hallway had become a scar instead of a warning. I stood beneath it after the crew left and felt an unfamiliar satisfaction. The money had not disappeared into groceries, a family emergency, or a problem Nate needed solved by morning. I had traded my time for something in my own life, and the roof had changed because of it. Mom would have called that a very low bar. It still felt good. On Sunday, I arrived at my parents' house at 3:58 carrying a folder of information from Dr. Klein's office. I had called his surgical coordinator with Mom's permission, which she gave only after learning the coordinator would not discuss post-operative instructions with anyone not listed. My old key was no longer on my ring. I had to ring the bell. Dad opened the door and stared at me for half a second too long. "Right," he said. "The key. That's usually how doors work." He stepped aside. Mom had ignored my instruction about food. The dining table held a cheese board, a bowl of grapes, crackers arranged in overlapping rows, and cocktail napkins printed with lemons. She was wearing a navy wrap dress. "You look nice," I said. I was already dressed. For what, I did not ask. Priya arrived with a bakery box. Nate came 7 minutes later carrying his laptop and apologizing about a call. "You're late to Mom's surgery meeting because of work," I asked. "I'm 7 minutes late." "He told us he'd be here," Mom said, which was apparently the same as punctuality. Priya set the box down. I brought pastries. "You didn't have to," Mom said, looking pleased. "I know." That one word made Priya glance at me. We sat around the dining table where Mom had removed my place less than a month earlier. There were 6 chairs now, although only 5 of us were present. Dad sat beside me. Mom placed Nate on her right, the same position he had occupied at the promotion dinner. I opened the folder. Mom sighed. "Do you have an agenda?" "Yes, of course you do. First 24 hours, first week, transportation, meals, household help, physical therapy." "This is exactly why I wanted you here," she said. "To make a plan, to know all this." I let it pass. The surgical coordinator expected Mom to go home the afternoon of the procedure. She would need someone with her overnight, help dressing and bathing, medication tracking, ice packs, meals, and rides to follow-up appointments. She would be in a sling for 4 to 6 weeks and unable to drive for at least part of that time. Dad took notes on a yellow legal pad. "I can do the medication," he said. Mom looked at him. "You can't remember your own blood pressure pill. It's in a daily box. Because Elise set it up. I can fill a box. You put dishwasher soap in the washing machine last year. That was one time, and the labels are designed badly." Nate laughed. Dad didn't. I said I can do it. Something in his voice made Mom stop. I asked, "Who's staying the first night?" Everyone looked at me. "I can," I said. "Surgery day and the first night." Mom's shoulders lowered. "Just a little." "I have a site meeting the 20th, Priya said, "but I can come after work." "You don't need to," I told her. "I want to." Nate looked at his calendar. "I can do dinner Thursday." "Dinner isn't an overnight," I said. "I can't sleep here. I have to be at the office by 7. You have an apartment 15 minutes away, and the office is in the other direction." Dad wrote something on his legal pad with unnecessary force. "What about Friday night?" I asked. "I may have to travel." "Where?" "Cincinnati." "May have to." The new role involves regional travel. We're waiting on confirmation. Mom touched his arm. We'll work around it. Then let's work around my job too, I said. I can stay Wednesday. I can come Friday evening after work for a few hours. I'm available most of Saturday, but I'm not staying 10 days. Mom pressed her lips together. Dad said, You don't have to stay. I live here. Thank you, I said. I'm the husband, he added. More to Mom than to me. Dennis, I know you mean well. I'm glad that's established. Priya hid a smile behind her coffee cup. I handed Dad the medication sheet. The hardest part will probably be mornings, showering, getting dressed, breakfast, ice setup. I can do breakfast. Mom said, He thinks toast is breakfast. It is literally a breakfast food, Dad said. I found a home care company that does short post-surgery visits, I continued. 2 hours in the morning, first 5 days. They can help with personal care and show Dad what's safe. Mom's expression closed. No. Why? I'm not having a stranger bathe me. Then Dad can help with that. She looked at him. Dad looked back. I have seen you naked before, he said. Priya choked on her tea. Mom turned bright red. Dennis! What? We've been married 39 years. Did you think I forgot? Even Nate laughed at that. The room loosened for a moment. Dad looked pleased with himself. Mom tried not to smile and failed. Then I mentioned the cost. Absolutely not, Mom said. For 10 hours of care, it's less than the catering dinner would have cost. That is irrelevant. It's also less than the watch, Dad said. Nate looked up. What watch? Mom's head turned slowly toward him. Dad's face changed. Was that a surprise? What watch? Nate repeated. Mom folded her hands. We were considering a promotion gift. A watch? I asked. A very good watch, Dad said. How good? Mom named a brand. Priya's eyebrows rose. Nate said, You don't have to buy me that. We wanted to, Mom said. Then use the money for the home aid, I said. The suggestion offended her more than the price of the aid. That money has nothing to do with my surgery. It's your money. It can have anything to do with anything. We set it aside for Nate. Nate shifted. Mom, seriously, I don't need a watch. You say that now because you know about it. I didn't need it 5 minutes ago either. Her face fell. She had imagined the gift as a moment. The box. Nate's surprise. The story he would tell. Paying someone to button her blouse did not produce the same photograph. Dad tapped his pen against the legal pad. We're hiring the aide. Mom looked at him. You don't decide that alone. Neither do you. The silence that followed felt different from the dinner. No guest had introduced it. No boss had pulled up a chair. Dad had simply stopped agreeing. Mom looked around the table as though we had staged a small coup. I don't know why all of you assume I'll be helpless, she said. We don't, I said. That's why we're not assigning one person to do everything. Her eyes met mine. I wanted you, she said. It was quieter than everything else she had said. The folder, the calendar, the watch, Nate's travel, they all fell back for a second. When I wake up, she continued, I wanted you there. You understand hospitals. You know what questions to ask. You don't get flustered. Her right hand rested on the table beside mine. The knuckles were slightly swollen. Her nails were polished the pale pink she had worn for as long as I could remember. I'll be there, I said. She turned her hand over and I held it. Then Nate's phone rang. He looked at the screen. I have to take this. Mom withdrew her hand as he left the room. We finished the plan without him. Dad would handle daily care and medications. The aide would come for 2 hours each morning for the first 5 days. I would stay the first night and visit Friday and Saturday. Priya volunteered for Thursday evening and Sunday afternoon. Nate, when he returned, agreed to Friday night if the Cincinnati trip did not happen, and the following Tuesday if it did. Mom disliked every part of the plan that was not me. She agreed anyway. In the kitchen afterward, Priya helped me wrap the untouched pastries. Did you know about the watch? I asked. No. Would he wear it? He loses his phone in our apartment twice a day. That wasn't my question. No, she said. He wouldn't. We heard Nate in the hall telling Mom he would call as soon as the travel schedule was confirmed. She told him not to worry and kissed his cheek. Priya tied the bakery ribbon around the box. He'll go to Cincinnati, she said. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Then why did he agree to Friday? Because agreeing ended the conversation. I looked through the doorway at my brother helping Dad carry empty cups to the kitchen. Nate balanced 3 at once, careful and capable. Priya watched him too. He asked if I could cover his night, she said. When? In the car before we came in. What did you say? That it wasn't my night. I turned to her. She gave me a small, uncertain smile. I'm trying something new. On the morning of surgery, Mom wore lipstick to the hospital. It makes me look less tired, she said while I checked her in at the surgical desk. You're about to be unconscious. The nurses have eyes. Dad carried her overnight bag even though she was not staying overnight. He had packed slippers, 2 magazines, a robe she would not be able to put on, and 3 apples. Nate texted the family chat. Good luck, Mom. You've got this. Call after. Priya sent a heart and a photograph of flowers she had ordered. When the nurse came to take Mom back, Mom kissed Dad, then caught my wrist. You'll be here when I wake up? Yes. You promise? I looked at her face without the social smile, without the clipboard, without any room left to arrange. I promise. She let go. As the doors closed behind her, Dad sat down beside me and put the red-covered house key on the empty chair between us. Just for tonight, he said. I picked it up. Just for tonight. The key felt heavier in my pocket than it had on my key ring. Dad sat with his knees apart, elbows resting on them, and stared at the surgical doors. She packed 3 apples, I said. I didn't know how long we'd be here. There's a cafeteria. Your mother doesn't like hospital apples. Then why did you bring them? He frowned. That's a good question. The surgery was supposed to take 90 minutes. At 2 hours, Dad began walking to the information desk every 10 minutes without actually asking anything. He would read the same sign about hand hygiene, glance at the clock, and return. Sit down, I said after his 4th trip. I've been sitting. You're making me nervous. I'm making you nervous? You're walking like you're waiting for a jury. He sat. 5 minutes later, Dr. Klein came through the doors wearing blue scrubs and a surgical cap marked with tiny sailboats. Dad stood so quickly that his chair scraped the floor. She did well, Dr. Klein said. All the air left my body at once. The tear had been extensive but repairable. There were no complications. Mom would spend another hour in recovery, then the nurses would help her dress and review medication instructions. Dad asked, Is she awake? Starting to wake up. Will she be in pain? Yes, Dr. Klein said, which I appreciated more than false comfort. The nerve block will help today. Tomorrow may be tougher. I asked about swelling, dressing changes, and when to call the office. Dad took out his yellow legal pad, although his notes consisted of 3 words. Ice. Pills. Fever. When we were allowed into recovery, Mom looked very small beneath the heated blanket. Her hairnet was crooked, and her lips were still pale pink. The lipstick had survived surgery better than she had. She opened her eyes when I touched her left hand. Elise? I'm here? Did it work? Dr. Klein repaired it. She blinked slowly, absorbing this. Your father brought apples. I know. I told him crackers. Dad leaned over the bed. You said snacks. Apples aren't a surgical snack. You're awake enough to criticize me, he said. That's encouraging. She turned her head toward him and smiled faintly. Then she looked back at me. Did Nate call? The question pinched, but anesthesia had taken away her filters, not invented new priorities. He texted. I'll call him when we're home. He's busy. I know. Her eyes closed. Her fingers remained around mine. A nurse named Evelyn helped us get her into a loose button front shirt Mom had rejected when I suggested it, because she said it looked like sleepwear. Now she wore it without comment. Every movement required negotiation. Which arm first? How far could she lean? Where should the sling rest? Dad hovered close enough to impede traffic. "Mr. Warren," Evelyn said, "your job is to breathe." I am breathing. Not in a helpful way. I liked her immediately. At home, Dad had converted the family room into a recovery station. The recliner faced the television. A folding table held water, tissues, medications, a bell, 2 remotes, and one of the apples. "You brought the apples home?" Mom asked. "They're good apples." He had also made a chart on poster board. The lines were crooked, but each medication had a column for time, dose, and initials. He had set alarms on his phone and placed frozen gel packs in the freezer. Mom surveyed everything with the suspicious expression of a general inspecting defenses. "The chair needs another pillow." Dad moved one behind her. "Not that one, the small blue one." He found it, too high. I adjusted it. She sighed. "This is going to be impossible. It's going to be uncomfortable," I said. "That isn't the same thing. You don't know. I know exactly enough to be irritating." That earned the smallest smile. The first night passed in 90-minute pieces. At 8, Mom needed the bathroom. At 9:30, she was too warm. At 11, the medication upset her stomach, so I brought crackers while Dad stood beside me holding an apple. "Stop offering her produce," I whispered. "It's all I packed. We're home. We have other food." At 1, she couldn't find a position that didn't pull at her shoulder. At 2:30, the nerve block began wearing off, and pain came through hard enough to frighten her. I sat on the carpet beside the recliner while we waited for the medication to work. "I hate this," she whispered. "I know. I can't even pull up my own pants. That part gets better. What if it doesn't? It will." "You don't know that." "No, but Dr. Klein does." She closed her eyes. Her face looked older without the movement of conversation across it. "I'm sorry about the dinner," she said. My breath caught. Then she added, "I shouldn't have tried something so ambitious with my shoulder like this." The apology dissolved before it reached me. I could have pushed. I could have asked which part she thought she was apologizing for. Instead, I tucked the blanket around her knees. "Try to sleep." At 3, she woke from a shallow doze and found me still on the floor. "You stayed." "I said I would." Her left hand reached down and touched my hair. For several minutes, neither of us said anything. Carmen from the home care company arrived at 8, wearing purple scrubs and carrying a tote bag covered in sunflowers. She was in her early 60s, with silver threaded through a long braid and the calm authority of someone who had seen people behave badly in bathrooms. Mom looked at her, then at me. "I don't need bathing today." Carmen set down her bag. "Good morning to you, too." Dad coughed to hide a laugh. "I'm Carmen," she continued. "We can start with breakfast. After that, you can tell me everything you don't need." Within 20 minutes, she had Mom eating oatmeal, Dad refilling the ice machine, and me sitting at the kitchen counter with coffee. "She's very bossy," Mom murmured when Carmen stepped away. "You hate that in a person." Mom gave me a look. At 9:30, I picked up my overnight bag. Mom watched from the recliner. "Where are you going?" "Home. I need a shower. I thought you took today off." "I did." "Then why are you leaving?" "Because Dad and Carmen are here." "Carmen leaves at 10. I'll come back tomorrow after work like we planned." Her face tightened. I didn't realize the schedule was quite so rigid. Dad came in carrying a fresh ice pack. "Let her go home, Carol. I didn't say she couldn't. You're saying it with your entire forehead." She glared at him. He placed the ice pack carefully against her sling. "We're fine." "We are not fine. You gave me the stool softener instead of the anti-nausea pill. They're both white." "That is why we have the chart," I said. Dad pointed to it, which I corrected. Mom looked at me. "If you're comfortable leaving, go." There was no answer that didn't make me the cruel person in the sentence. I kissed her forehead. "I love you. I'll call tonight." She turned her face toward the television. Dad walked me to the front door. I held out the red key. "Keep it until tomorrow," he said, "in case we're asleep when you come. I'm not coming until after work." Right. Tomorrow. He closed my fingers around it. At home, I stood under the shower until the water ran cold. Then I slept for 4 hours without dreaming. Priya went to my parents' house Thursday evening with chicken and rice casserole, a green salad, and a bouquet of flowers from Nate. She sent a photograph to the family chat of Mom in the recliner, wearing a silk scarf over her unwashed hair. Mom looked pleased. Dad looked tired but upright. Nate responded from work. Beautiful. Love you, Mom. He had not called. I wrote, "How's the pain?" Mom answered, "Manageable." Dad privately messaged. She told me it was a 7 when Carmen asked. I wrote, "Stay on the schedule. Don't wait until it gets worse." He sent, "I know." 2 minutes later, "Is every 6 hours from the first dose or midnight?" I called him. Friday morning, Nate's Cincinnati trip became official. He posted in the group chat, "Bad timing. Flight is at 4, back Sunday afternoon. Priya can cover tonight." Priya responded before anyone else. "Priya, I have a deadline tonight. I did not agree to cover." The typing dots appeared beside Nate's name, stopped, and appeared again. "Nate, we discussed it." "Priya, you asked." I said no. Mom wrote, "Please don't argue. We'll manage." Then Nate messaged me privately. "Can you stay tonight?" This is exactly the kind of situation families should be flexible about. I was at my desk, reading the request while an equipment company kept me on hold. Through the glass, a physical therapist was teaching a 68-year-old man how to transfer safely from a wheelchair. The man's husband stood beside him, following every instruction. I wrote, "I'm visiting after work. I'm not staying overnight." Nate, "Dad's exhausted." Me, "Then arrange overnight help." Nate, "With what money?" Me, "The watch." He called. I declined. At 5:30, I walked into my parents' house and found Mom crying. Not loudly. She was sitting in the recliner with her face turned toward the window, tears sliding down without any change in expression. Dad stood in the kitchen staring into the refrigerator as though dinner might identify itself. "What happened?" I asked. "Nothing," Mom said. Dad said, "The pain got ahead of us." It did not. It did. I checked the chart. The last dose had been 40 minutes late because Mom said she wasn't hungry and refused to take it without food. The ice pack had warmed. Her sling strap was twisted at the neck. I fixed the strap, brought crackers, and reset the medication alarm. Dad heated Priya's casserole. Mom held my wrist while we waited for the pills to help. "You came," she whispered. I said I would. Nate called from the airport while we were eating. Mom's whole face changed when Dad answered on video. She wiped her eyes and told Nate she was doing wonderfully. He apologized for the trip, showed her the runway through a window, and promised to bring something from Cincinnati. "It's work," Mom said. "You have to go." The call lasted 6 minutes. Afterward, she picked at her casserole. "You could stay," she said to me. "I'm here until 10. I mean tonight." We made a plan. Plans change. They only seem to change in one direction. Dad stopped eating. Mom put down her fork. "I'm in pain, Elise. I know. That's why I'm helping until 10, and why we can call the agency for overnight care. I don't want Carmen sleeping here. It may not be Carmen. That's even worse." Dad said, "I can handle tonight." "You fell asleep during Jeopardy," Mom snapped. "That is not a medical event. Jeopardy is exhausting." I almost smiled, but Mom didn't. At 9, I called the agency. An overnight aide was available starting at 10:30. The cost was high, but not impossible. Mom said no. Dad looked at the chart, then at her. "We're hiring her," he said. "I need sleep." The honesty startled Mom into silence. When the aide arrived, I gave her the medication schedule and showed her the ice packs. Then I placed the red key on the hook beside the pantry where it had always lived. Mom watched me from the recliner. "You're really leaving?" "Yes." Her face hardened, but beneath the anger was fear. I bent and kissed her cheek. "I love you," I said. "And you're not alone." For once, I let those be two separate things. Mom did not call the next morning. Dad sent a message at 7:13. Night aid excellent. Your mother slept 4 hours. I slept 6. No apples were harmed. I smiled at my phone. At 9, Carmen texted me a photograph of the medication chart. Dad had initialed every box. One dose was 15 minutes late, which placed him ahead of several licensed facilities I had dealt with. I wrote, "Looks good. How is she?" Carmen answered, "Sore, proud, both treatable." When I arrived Saturday, Dad was in the kitchen making scrambled eggs. The counter was covered with shells, butter, a whisk, 2 pans, and enough utensils to suggest he had cooked each egg separately. "Breakfast?" he asked. "It's 1 in the afternoon." "Your mother wanted eggs." From the family room, Mom called, "I said I could eat eggs." Dad lowered his voice. "Same thing." He had changed the dry erase board beside the refrigerator into a command center. Medication times were written in blue, meals in green, Carmen's visits in purple, follow-up appointments in black. The handwriting leaned uphill, but the information was correct. "You did this? I know how to use markers. I'm impressed." "You sound surprised." "I am surprised." He pointed the whisk at me. "I was in the Navy for 4 years. You worked in payroll. There were forms, organization matters." Mom appeared in the doorway wearing sweatpants and the button-front shirt. Her hair was clean, although only one side had been styled. The other stood up near the crown. "You're laughing," she said. "I'm smiling at Dad's military eggs. They're rubbery." "I haven't cooked them yet," he said. "I'm preparing you." She lowered herself carefully into a kitchen chair. The movement took time, and she hated that I watched. "I can do it," she said. "You are doing it. Your face is helping." I turned away and began making coffee. Carmen had helped Mom shower that morning. Mom described the process like a diplomatic crisis, but admitted Carmen had found a way to wash her hair without getting the dressing wet. "She's competent," Mom said, with the reluctant respect of a queen acknowledging a rival army. "Good. Her visits are expensive. So was the watch." Dad laughed too loudly. Mom glared at both of us, then took a bite of egg. "It's not bad," she told him. He looked more pleased than he had at any compliment during the promotion dinner. I stayed for 3 hours. I changed the ice pack once, checked the incision instructions, and made tea. When Mom asked if I could put a load of towels in the washer, I told Dad they were ready. "You know where the laundry room is?" she said to me. "So does he." Dad picked up the basket. "She's right." Mom watched him carry it away. "You don't have to prove something every minute," she said. "Neither do you." We looked at each other. Then she asked about my roof. The question was so ordinary that it felt intimate. "It's fixed. When?" "Wednesday." "Why didn't you tell me? You were getting ready for surgery." I still would have wanted to know. I believed her. That was the problem with Mom. She could reduce me to a function and still care whether rain got into my house. "They replaced part of the decking," I said. "It cost more than I wanted, but I caught it early." "You used the overtime money?" "Yes." She touched the sling with her left hand. "I'm glad. No comparison. No mention of the shift I had abandoned for Nate. Just, I'm glad." We drank tea while Dad fought with the washing machine. On Sunday, Nate arrived from Cincinnati carrying a hotel gift shop bag. Mom had put on lipstick again. She was sitting upright when he came through the door, as if being found in pain would burden him. "There she is," he said. He bent to kiss her cheek. She reached for him with her left arm and held on. "You look tired," she said. "I am." The return flight was delayed on the runway for an hour. "You should go home and rest." He had been in the house 40 seconds. Priya came in behind him carrying their overnight bag, her laptop case, and the container of soup she had promised Mom. "You look tired too," I told her. "Thank you." Nate held up the gift shop bag. "I brought bourbon chocolates." Mom laughed. "For someone taking pain medication? That was poorly considered. We'll save them." He sat on the couch and began telling us about the trip. The meetings had gone well. Rebecca had approved the first stage of his escalation plan. Tom wanted him to present it to another regional team. I felt a small, complicated lift of pride. "Congratulations," I said. He glanced at me. "Thanks." There was no apology in the look, but there was something less certain than anger. Dad came in with a basket of clean towels. "Good," he said. "You're here." Nate looked wary. "I said I'd come. Put those in the linen closet, would you?" Dad placed the basket directly in his lap. Nate laughed. "Sure." He kept talking about Cincinnati. 5 minutes later, the basket was still on his lap. Priya stood, took it without a word, and carried it down the hall. I followed her. "You know where the linen closet is?" I asked. "I found it Thursday." She opened the door. Towels leaned in uneven stacks. I took the basket from her. "He can do this." "I know." "Then why are you?" "Because your dad has made lunch. The soup needs heating, and I'm tired of looking at the basket. That is the family motto." She pressed her lips together. I shelved 2 towels. Put it back in his lap. "That will create a ridiculous argument." "Yes, over towels." "No." She looked toward the family room. Nate's voice carried down the hall. He was telling Mom that Rebecca had praised his ability to adjust under pressure. Priya leaned against the closet door. "We're supposed to finalize the wedding guest list this week," she said. "He promised to call his relatives. Has he?" "He sent me your mother's contact list. That sounds efficient. He said I'm better at talking to people." I looked at her. "She is already calling them," Priya said. "Your mother." "She told me not to worry. What did you say?" I said, "Thank you." The words came out like a confession. I handed the basket back to her, put it in his lap. This time she smiled. We returned to the family room. Priya placed the basket exactly where Dad had placed it. Nate stopped talking. "What are you doing, giving this back?" I said I'd handle it. "You didn't. I was talking to my mother. You can fold while talking." Mom said, "Priya, it's fine." Priya kept her eyes on Nate. "It's not about the towels." He looked at me. I didn't say anything, I told him. "You didn't have to." That was the first crack between them I saw clearly. It was not caused by me. I was simply no longer standing over it with a rug. Nate folded the towels. Badly, and with enough force to suggest the washcloths had betrayed him, but he folded them. His assigned evening was Tuesday. At 5:15, I arrived for a planned visit with iced tea and found Dad putting on his jacket. "You're leaving?" I asked. "Pharmacy, then groceries." "Where's Nate?" he called. From the recliner, Mom said, "Something came up at work." "What?" He didn't give me every detail. Dad zipped his jacket. "He's not coming." Mom's mouth tightened. "He said he would try." "Trying is what you do before you know the result," Dad said. "He knows the result." He sounded more tired than angry. "Do you have to go to the store tonight?" I asked. "We're out of milk, bread, coffee, and the soup Priya made. That's a strange combination to finish at once. I've been busy. I can order delivery. I am perfectly capable of shopping. I know I'm offering." Mom watched us. "Could you stay until he gets back? I'm visiting until 7. Elise, I can place the grocery order and Dad can stay." Dad took off his jacket. "I don't need everyone rearranging things," Mom said. "Then call Nate back," I said. Her eyes flashed. "I told you, he's working. So am I most days. This is different." "How?" "He just started this position. 4 weeks ago. He has to establish himself." Dad sat down at the edge of the couch. "Call him, Carol." She looked at him. "He said to call if we needed anything," Dad continued. "We need him." Mom's left hand moved over the blanket. "He's busy. I was busy Friday night. That isn't the same." "No," he said. "I live here." He picked up her phone from the side table and held it out. Mom stared at it as if it were a test she had not prepared for. Then she took it and called Nate. He answered after 4 rings. "Hey, Mom, everything okay?" "You're on speaker," she said. A pause. "Hi, everyone." Dad said nothing. Mom asked, "Can you still come tonight?" "I don't think so. The implementation timeline changed, and Tom needs the revised numbers first thing." "How late will you be?" "Hard to say. Your father needs groceries. I can send Priya." Across the room, Dad closed his eyes. Mom said, "She's working, too." Another pause. "Then Elise is there, right?" Everyone looked at me. "I'm visiting," I said. Nate's voice changed. Can't you just help them out? I am helping. Dad is here. We can order groceries. I don't understand why everything has to become a statement with you now. Dad leaned toward the phone. She didn't ask you to make a statement, he said. I asked you to come. Nate went silent. Dad continued, You said Tuesday. It's Tuesday. I know, but work. You keep saying work like the rest of us have hobbies. Mom flinched. Nate said, That's not fair. No, Dad answered. It isn't. The quiet after that felt enormous. Nate promised to come Thursday. Dad said he had heard the same promise about Tuesday. Mom ended the call before either of them could make it worse. I ordered groceries. Dad made sandwiches. I sat with Mom until 7, then put on my coat. She did not ask me to stay. At the door she said, He really is under pressure. I'm sure he is. Rebecca expects a lot. So do you. Mom looked toward the kitchen, where Dad was putting groceries away from the bags a stranger had delivered without damaging the family. He used to call me every day, she said. Who? Nate. When he first moved out, every day on his drive home. Then he got busier, so I stopped asking. If I make things difficult, he disappears. The admission came so softly, I almost missed it. And me? I asked. Her eyes lifted to mine. You never disappear. It wasn't praise. Not anymore. I opened the front door. That doesn't mean you never have to make room for me. She held my gaze, but she did not answer. Behind her, Dad dropped a jar in the pantry. It didn't break. Neither of us moved to save it. The jar contained mustard. Dad picked it up, inspected the lid, and put it on the shelf. The kitchen remained standing. By the end of Mom's first week, Carmen had become that woman from the agency instead of the stranger. By the end of the second, she was Carmen again. Mom extended the visits for 3 additional mornings. We're using the watch money, Dad told me. There was no watch money, Mom corrected from the recliner. There was simply money. Money we were going to use for a watch. We had not decided. You showed me the website 6 times. Mom adjusted her sling. You liked it. I liked the woman modeling it. Dennis. He looked at me. She was very attractive. Mom tried to glare at him, but a smile escaped. They were changing in uneven, almost insulting increments. Dad learned to make 3 dinners that didn't come from a can. Mom learned that towels folded by someone else still absorbed water. She began walking outside each afternoon with Dad carrying her phone, which made her nervous because he kept putting it in the same pocket as his keys. I visited, but I did not take over. I drove her to the first follow-up with Dr. Klein because it was one of the rides I had agreed to provide. I brought coffee, listened while she complained about the sling, and left when I said I would. Sometimes she punished me with silence. Sometimes she asked about my roof. On Thursday, Nate finally showed up with Thai food and a bottle of wine Mom couldn't drink. Dad texted me during the visit. He came. A few minutes later, he ordered curry. Your mother hates curry. Then, apparently she likes it now. I called Dad the next morning. How did it go? He stayed 2 hours. That's something. He took a work call for 20 minutes. That sounds right. Dad sighed. Your mother told him it was fine. Of course she did. Then she told him she was disappointed he missed Tuesday. I stopped walking. I was crossing the hospital lobby with a folder pressed against my chest. She said that? Direct quote. He looked like she'd thrown the curry at him. What did he say? That he was sorry and it couldn't be helped. Could it? I don't know. I've learned that not knowing is sometimes how I avoid having an opinion. The observation was so precise I had to sit on the edge of a planter. That sounds unpleasantly self-aware, I said. I don't like it. Most people don't. He cleared his throat. Priya didn't come with him. Was she supposed to? No, I just thought she would. Priya called me that afternoon. Her voice was controlled in the way people sound when they have spent hours making sure it will be. Are you at work? Yes. Can you talk? I can go outside. The courtyard behind Winston held 3 metal tables and an ashtray no one was supposed to use. I sat under a tree while an ambulance backed toward the service entrance. Priya did not ease into it. I postponed the wedding. My grip tightened around the phone. Postponed. How? We had to sign the final venue contract by today. I didn't. Does Nate know? He knows now. Are you okay? No. The answer was quiet. I waited. We had a fight Tuesday after he canceled on your mom, she said. He wanted me to go over there. I told him I had a deadline. The deadline you mentioned? A hotel project. I'd already stayed late Monday. He said I could bring my laptop to your parents' house. Generous. I said he could bring his laptop to his parents' house. He told me I didn't understand the pressure he was under. A helicopter moved somewhere above the hospital, loud enough that I pressed the phone harder to my ear. What happened? He said I was acting like you. I closed my eyes. He meant it as an insult, she said. I assumed. I asked what that meant. He said you'd turned every ordinary favor into a referendum on respect. That sounds like Nate. I asked him if calling his relatives for our wedding was an ordinary favor. He said I was better with people. I asked about the seating chart. He said I cared more about table arrangements than our future. That also sounds like Nate. He kept explaining until I realized he didn't plan to answer me. Answer what? Why the work only belonged to the person who noticed it. The courtyard door opened. 2 nurses came out, laughing about something, then lowered their voices when they saw me. Are you ending it? I asked. I don't know. What does postponing mean? It means I'm not putting down another $12,000 while I'm wondering whether I'm marrying someone who wants a wife or an infrastructure system. That's fair. It doesn't feel fair. It can be fair and awful. She made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. Is he there? I asked. No. He went to work. Of course he did. He said one of us had to behave normally. I looked through the courtyard windows at people crossing the lobby with flowers, bags, walkers, coffee. Ordinary lives still moving while someone's private future cracked open. Where are you staying tonight? Our apartment. He may stay with a friend. I don't know. You can stay with me. Thank you. I might. Anytime. She went quiet. Elise, I need you to know I'm not doing this because of the dinner. I know. I mean, the dinner matters, but it's not the reason. I know. I don't want Nate saying you did this. He will. He's wrong. I know that too. Nate arrived at my townhouse at 8 that night. He did not knock gently. When I opened the door, he stood on the porch in shirt sleeves, his blue jacket folded over one arm. He looked exhausted and furious, and so much like our father around the eyes that it startled me. Is she here? He asked. Priya. Who else? No. Did you tell her she could stay? Yes. He laughed once and looked toward the blue lights across the street. They had changed to green since April. Of course you did. You're welcome to come inside if you stop acting like I'm hiding your fugitive fiancé. He stepped past me. I closed the door. Do you want water? No. Good. That saves me serving it. He turned. Can you not do that for 1 minute? Do what? Make everything about that dinner. You came to my house to accuse me of ruining your engagement. I didn't bring it up. You got into her head. Priya has her own head. She designs buildings with it. She was fine before all this. Was she? Yes. Ask her. I have asked her. She gives me your language. What language? Invisible work. Default person. Making room. She never talked like this before. Maybe she didn't have words for it. Or maybe you handed them to her. I walked into the living room and sat down. Nate remained standing near the coffee table, blue jacket over his arm like he had arrived for a meeting. The only thing I told Priya was that she didn't have to choose sides. That's not true. You told her to put the towels back in my lap. I told her you could fold towels. This is unbelievable. It was your assigned visit. Dad had been caring for Mom all week. You talked about Cincinnati until Priya did the task in your lap. They were towels. They're always towels, Nate. Or slides, or groceries, or calls to relatives. Each thing is too small to matter, but somehow somebody else is always doing it. He paced toward the window. I work, he said. So does Priya. I know she works. So do I know. Do you? He turned. You think because you coordinate discharges, you're the only person with stress. No. You think my job is easy because I'm good at it. No. You think Mom and Dad handed me everything. No. My answers slowed him down. I said, I think you work hard. I think you deserve the promotion. I think Rebecca sees something real in you. He stared at me. Then what do you want? I want you to stop treating your hard work like proof that ours is optional. His anger faltered, then returned in a different shape. You have no idea what Rebecca expects from me. Rebecca approved your plan. His eyes narrowed. How do you know that? You announced it Sunday. That doesn't mean I'm secure. Is your promotion in danger? He looked away. Did Rebecca threaten you? I asked. No. Did she discipline you? No. Did she do anything except notice how you treated me and ask whether everything was okay? You don't understand how that changes someone's perception. Maybe their perception should change. He set the jacket over the back of a chair. I told her it was a misunderstanding. I know. You made that sound like a lie. It was. The server canceled. Mom knew before Saturday that I wasn't sitting. She told me Friday. And what did you say? He dragged both hands down his face. We did this already? No, I asked. You avoided. He walked into my kitchen and stood beneath the gray-painted cabinet hinges. For a second, he looked younger, not innocent, just younger. I said it made sense, he admitted. The room went still. He looked at the floor. Mom said the table was full and you'd be happier helping than sitting with a bunch of people from my company. I said that made sense. I had known he accepted it. Hearing the sentence still found a new place to hurt. Why? Because it did. At the time. Why? Because you always help. That isn't an answer. He slammed one hand onto the counter. Because I wanted the dinner to go well. Because Rebecca was coming. Because Mom was already anxious and Dad is useless at hosting and you know how to make everything work. Is that what you want to hear? No. Then what? I wanted to hear that you saw I was your sister. His anger disappeared, not gradually. It simply left, and underneath it was shame. He pulled out a kitchen chair but didn't sit. I knew, he said. You didn't act like it. I know. The words were barely audible. For 1 second, I thought we had reached each other. Then he said, but this thing with Priya is separate. I laughed, and the moment closed. She postponed the wedding because you expected her to become me, I said. How is that separate? I did not ask her to become you. No, you just got angry when she stopped doing the job. He picked up his jacket. You sound happy about this. That accusation hurt more than the others. I love Priya. I love you. I wanted to stand beside you at your wedding, then help me fix it. I can't. You won't. No, Nate. I can't apologize for you, explain for you, or translate you into the man she hoped she was marrying. His mouth tightened. You've changed, he said. I stopped doing some things. Same difference. He walked to the door. Before opening it, he turned back. Mom thinks you're enjoying all of us falling apart without you. I'm not. She says this proves you wanted to be needed. The words landed because part of them was true. Being needed had given me a place, even when the place had no chair. I looked at him. I did want to be needed, I said. I just didn't realize you'd all use that to avoid knowing me. He left without answering. The next morning, Dad came over with a paint roller and a small can of ceiling paint. Your mother said the water stain is still visible, he explained. She's in a sling and somehow managing remote inspections. She asked me to take care of it. I almost told him I could paint it myself. Instead, I opened the door wider. Dad covered the hallway floor with an old sheet and climbed the stepladder. He painted slowly, tongue pressed to one corner of his mouth. Nate called me, he said. I figured. He says you've turned Priya against him. I haven't. I know. The roller stopped. Dad looked down at me from the ladder. I knew that dinner was wrong, he said. Before it started. I know. No. You know I knew about the seating. I mean, I knew it was wrong. He looked back at the ceiling. I told myself your mother had already decided. I told myself Nate was nervous. I told myself you'd complain, then make a joke and save the evening. Dad, I counted on you being easier to hurt. The sentence hung between us. He rolled white paint over the brown stain until it disappeared. I'm sorry, he said. This time, he did not ask me to forgive Mom. He did not ask me to forgive him either. Dad finished painting the ceiling without saying anything else. He came down from the ladder, folded the drop cloth, and carried the roller to the kitchen sink. You can throw that away, I said. It's a perfectly good roller. It cost $4. That attitude is how people lose their retirement. He washed it until the water ran clear, then stood it upright beside my dish rack. The stain was still faintly visible through the first coat. Dad returned the next day to add another. He did not mention the dinner again. He brought sandwiches, complained about my stepladder, and tightened a loose doorknob I had not asked him to fix. Before leaving, he handed me the red covered key. I looked at it in his palm. What's this? Your mother said you should have it. I gave it back. I know. Then why are you returning it? He rubbed his thumb across the red rubber. She said it's silly for you not to have a key. That isn't the reason I gave it back. I told her that. And? She said you were being dramatic. I held out my hand, then closed his fingers around the key. I don't want it yet. He nodded. There was disappointment in his face, but no argument. I'll keep it, he said. Good. For emergencies. Real emergencies. How do we define real? Blood, fire, or Harrison Ford showing up at the house. Why Harrison Ford? I don't know. He seems urgent. Dad considered this. Your mother would want time to put on lipstick. Priya stayed with me that weekend. She arrived Friday carrying a suitcase, her laptop, and 2 reusable grocery bags. I bought food, she said. You didn't have to. I was afraid that sentence might come up. She had brought eggs, bread, cheese, fruit, coffee, and the same noodles I ordered when I was too tired to cook. I'm staying for 2 nights, she said. I'm not moving in, and I'm not asking you to mediate. Excellent opening statement. I've been practicing boundaries. Very fashionable right now. Nate was staying at their apartment. Priya had spent the previous week at a hotel, which she said was too expensive and smelled like industrial coconut. They had spoken twice in person and argued both times. He wants to know whether we're still engaged, she told me over dinner. What did you say? That I don't know. What do you need to know? She twisted noodles around her fork. Whether he thinks the problem is that I'm upset or that he did something. That may take a while. I know. He came here. I know that too. Did he tell you what happened? He said you refused to help. I laughed. He also said you told him he wanted me to become you. I did say that. I don't want to become you. I'm devastated. She smiled, then grew serious. I mean, I love you, but you're exhausted. That's fair. You notice what everyone needs before they ask. Then you get angry when they don't notice you. That's also fair. Is this what therapy feels like? Therapy usually has better chairs. She looked around my small kitchen. Your chairs are terrible. We spent the weekend doing almost nothing. Priya worked for several hours Saturday, then closed her laptop at 5 without apologizing. We watched a movie neither of us followed. She remade the guest bed Sunday morning and washed her own towels before leaving. When I told her she didn't need to, she said, I know. That answer was beginning to sound different to me. Mom started physical therapy 3 weeks after surgery. She disliked the therapist because he was 20 minutes younger than she believed a medical professional should be, and told her to stop compensating with her neck. My neck is all I have, she complained when I drove her home from the second appointment. You have an entire left arm. I'm right-handed. You also have Dad. He's become very assertive. I noticed. He bought the wrong laundry detergent on purpose. Why would he do that on purpose? To prove I'll survive. Did you? My towels smell like a pine forest. We stopped at a red light. Mom adjusted the scarf around her sling. Is Priya still at your house? No. Where is she? Her apartment, I think. With Nate? I don't know. Mom watched the traffic through the passenger window. This is terrible for him. It's terrible for both of them. He loves her. I know. He chose that ring himself. I glanced at her. What? Nothing. He did. Okay. He narrowed it down to 3. And then? Mom looked away. And then you and I went to the jeweler, she said. Right. I had spent an entire Saturday visiting stores with Mom because Nate had a golf outing. Priya's sapphire had been my suggestion. I didn't choose it, Mom said. You did. He paid for it. That isn't the same thing. No. The light changed. Mom's good hand worried the edge of the scarf. Do you think Priya knows? I doubt it. Would it matter? I don't know. She loved the ring. Yes. Then maybe it doesn't matter. We both heard the larger question. I turned toward my parents' neighborhood. Mom said, "Don't go home yet." Where do you want to go? Anywhere. I drove to a park beside the river. We sat in the car because the path was uneven and Mom was nervous about being bumped. The air conditioner blew too cold, then too warm when I turned it down. She watched 2 adults unload folding chairs from a van. I did call a server, she said. I kept my eyes forward. For the promotion dinner. Jill gave me a number, but the woman was already booked. I didn't want to tell you because I thought you might say no. So you lied. I avoided telling you. That's a long way to say lied. Yes. The word surprised me. Mom continued before she could lose momentum. I wanted the dinner to be perfect. Your brother was so anxious and Rebecca mattered. I knew you could manage it. You knew I'd already given up my shift. I knew. You let me buy the groceries. I intended to reimburse you. That isn't the point. I know. Another surprise. She looked down at her sling. I told myself you wouldn't enjoy the conversation, that it was all people from Nate's company and you'd rather be busy. Did I say that? No. Did you ask? No. Did you ever plan to? Her eyes filled, but she did not look away. No. Outside, one of the folding chairs slipped from the van and clattered onto the pavement. The woman carrying it swore. Her companion laughed and helped pick it up. Mom said, "When you sat down, I was angry because Rebecca could see what I had done." Yes. And after you left, I told myself you had made it look worse than it was. Yes. I told Marlene you were jealous. I know. I knew you weren't. That one reached deeper than the others. Why would you say it? Because if you were jealous, then I didn't have to be ashamed. Her voice broke. I looked at her. She was crying silently, the same way she had cried in the recliner, except this time she did not turn toward the window. I kept thinking about what you asked, she said, why I expect you to come back. I waited. When Nate was in college, if I criticized him, he wouldn't call for a week. Sometimes, too. You'd get angry, but you'd still answer the phone. You'd still come for dinner. So you stopped criticizing him. Not completely. Mostly. Yes. And gave the consequences to me. Her face crumpled. I thought I was protecting the relationship, she whispered. Which one? She covered her eyes with her left hand. For years, the sight of Mom crying had ended every argument. I would move toward her, soften the truth, find the sentence that let her recover without changing. I sat still. After a moment, she lowered her hand. I was harder on you because I felt safe with you, she said. That isn't safety. That's using someone's love against them. I know. No, Mom. You don't get to say that just because it ends the sentence. She flinched. I continued. I served that dinner because I loved all of you. You looked at that love and decided it could carry one more plate. I'm sorry. The words were plain. No if. No misunderstanding. No reference to my interpretation. I cried then, which annoyed me. I did not want her apology to unlock me like a code. Mom reached toward me, stopped, and rested her hand on the console between us. I don't expect you to forgive me now, she said. Good. She nodded. We sat beside the river until the air conditioner became unbearable. Her apology did not fix anything. It did not make me want the red key back. But when I drove her home, the silence between us felt empty instead of crowded. Nate did not contact me for nearly a month. I heard about him through Mom, Dad, and occasionally Priya. His rollout at work was going well. He and Priya had started seeing a couples counselor, but the wedding remained postponed. Priya had returned to their apartment under an agreement that she would not resume planning until they both decided whether there should be a wedding to plan. Mom's sling came off. Dad continued cooking twice a week, although one of those nights was usually sandwiches. I worked overtime, repainted the hallway beneath the repaired roof, and stopped checking the family calendar entirely. Then, on a warm evening in late June, my doorbell rang. Nate stood on the porch, holding nothing. No flowers, no wine, no presentation. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside. He sat at my kitchen table. For a while, he looked at the painted hinges. "Those are terrible," he said. "I know. I could replace them. I can replace them." He nodded. We sat across from each other with nothing useful between us. Finally, he said, "I saw the place cards Friday night. I know you knew." "No. I mean, I came over after work. Mom had finished them. I saw there wasn't one for you. I waited. I could have moved a chair," he said. "I could have told her to invite fewer people. I could have called you." "Yes." "I didn't because having you serve made the dinner easier for me." There it was. Not Mom's anxiety, not Rebecca, not logistics. Him. "I let you walk into it," he said. "Then I watched you realize." His voice shook. "I'm sorry, Elise." I looked at my brother, waiting to see whether the apology would turn into a request. For once, he let it remain an apology. I did not tell him it was okay. It wasn't, and we had both spent enough time using that sentence as a door out of uncomfortable rooms. "Why now?" I asked. Nate folded his hands on the table. "Priya asked me a question in counseling." "What question?" "She asked what I know about you when you're not doing something for me." I looked at him. "I said you work at Winston. You bought this place. You like English breakfast tea. That last one came from Priya. I know that now." Despite myself, I smiled. He did not. "I know your birthday. I know you hate olives unless they're chopped into something. I know you wanted to be a physical therapist before you realized the program would put you into debt for the rest of your natural life. That's optimistic. I know you watch terrible renovation shows and yell at people for removing walls. Sometimes the walls are structural." He nodded solemnly. "That's what you yell?" The smile stayed, but it hurt. "I know things about you," he said, "just not as many as I should." "What did you tell Priya?" "That? Not a better version?" There wasn't one. I leaned back. Nate looked around my kitchen. His eyes stopped on the contractor's receipt, held to the refrigerator with a magnet. "How's the roof?" "Fixed." "When did you do that, while Mom was waiting for surgery?" I didn't know. No, I could have helped. "With what?" He thought about it. "Nothing," he admitted. I was going to say something automatic. That's progress. He rubbed his thumb against the edge of his cuff, even though he wasn't wearing a jacket. "I'm not here to ask you to talk to Priya." "Good. I know I have to fix that myself." "Yes." "If she lets me." "Yes." He looked irritated by my one-word answers, then seemed to understand that his discomfort was not another task I had agreed to solve. "I blamed you because it was easier," he said. "If you changed her, then I didn't have to believe she'd been unhappy with me." "Mom did the same thing." "I know. Do you?" "She told me what she said to Aunt Marlene. That surprised me. She also told me not to ask you to forgive her. That must have caused physical pain. She's practicing. A lot of that going around." He breathed out through his nose. "I'm trying, Elise. I see that. What happens now?" "I don't know." He waited for more. I said, "I believe you're sorry." His shoulders dropped. "That doesn't mean I go back to reviewing your presentations, managing Mom's appointments, and coming over whenever someone can't find a passport. I'm not asking for that. Not tonight." His face tightened, but he nodded. "If we rebuild," I said, "I need you to know me when you don't need something. How do I do that? You're an operations manager. Develop a process." He laughed. It came out cracked and surprised. Then he grew serious again. "Can I call you? You have been able to call me this entire time. You know what I mean." "Yes." I thought about every time he had called from a parking lot, an airport, a moving truck, a store where he could not decide which gift Mom would like. I thought about how rarely my phone rang because he had a story instead of a problem. "Call when you don't need anything," I said. "That's the rule. It's a start." He stood and picked up nothing, because he had brought nothing. At the door, he paused. "I really did deserve the promotion," he said. "I know, and Rebecca isn't planning to fire me." "I know. She told me I handled the rollout well. I'm glad. She also said leadership means noticing the person doing the work before they have to announce it." I raised my eyebrows. "She didn't mention the dinner," he said quickly. "It was general feedback, I'm sure." "It was probably partly about the dinner." "I'm sure." He put a hand on the doorknob. "Elise?" "Yes?" "I'm sorry you had to find out in front of everyone that there wasn't a place for you." The truth of the sentence tightened my throat. "I'm sorry, too." He left. 9 days passed before he called. I was folding laundry in my living room and almost didn't answer because I assumed he had decided 9 days was a sufficient waiting period before asking me to edit an email. "What do you need?" I said. "Nothing. You sound suspicious. I'm at a restaurant in Dayton." "Why?" "Tom and I had a site visit." "Okay. They have pear preserves on the cheese board." I sat down on the arm of the couch. "That's why you called? I thought you'd find it funny." "I do." I told Tom it was an old family touch. I laughed hard enough that I had to put down the shirt I was folding. Nate laughed too. We spoke for 12 minutes. He told me about a hotel that had given him a room beside the ice machine. I told him Dad had tried to repaint my hallway and gotten ceiling paint in his hair. Neither of us asked the other for anything. The next week, he invited me to lunch. He arrived before me. That was how I knew he was serious. The restaurant was a sandwich place near Winston, crowded with hospital staff and courthouse employees. Nate had already ordered my tea, but he had ordered Earl Grey instead of English breakfast. "Close," I said. "They're both England. One is a breakfast. One is a man." He wrote it in the Notes app on his phone. "You don't have to document me. I'm developing a process." We did not discuss the dinner. He asked about my work and listened through an entire story involving a wheelchair ramp, a thunderstorm, and an insurance company that believed human beings could wait on hold indefinitely without food. When the check came, Nate picked it up. "I can pay for mine. I invited you. That has never stopped this family from assigning me a bill." He winced. "Sorry," I said. "That was cheap." "No, it was accurate." He paid. Accuracy was becoming less dangerous between us. Priya did not reschedule the wedding. She and Nate continued counseling. Some weeks she slept at their apartment. Some weeks she stayed with a friend closer to her office. She stopped managing his family calls, and Nate called his own relatives to explain that the venue contract had not been signed. Aunt Marlene told me he had sounded like a man being forced to read his own mail. Priya kept the sapphire ring but wore it less often. When Mom asked what that meant, Priya said, "It means I'm deciding." Mom accepted the answer without calling me afterward to interpret it. Nate began doing ordinary things badly and without applause. He took over one of Dad's grocery runs. He drove Mom to physical therapy and forgot which entrance to use. He made 3 calls to fix an error in her insurance statement, then told me the story with the stunned indignation of someone discovering bureaucracy for the first time. I was on hold for 40 minutes. That's adorable. The music started over every 90 seconds. I know. How do you do this all day? Now you know why I have opinions about structural walls. Mom's recovery moved forward. Her sling came off, then returned for longer outings because she did not trust other people not to bump her. She regained enough motion to style both sides of her hair and began complaining that Dr. Klein's instructions were too cautious. Dad continued using the whiteboard even after the medication schedule ended. He added grocery lists, baseball games, and reminders for his own appointments. When he needed a ride to cardiology, he asked me 2 weeks in advance. "I can drive myself," he said. I'm asking if you want to come." I did. In the parking garage, he insisted on the blue section on level 4. I did not tell him I had always used the emergency garage because he once said he preferred it. Mom called me in August. Her birthday was the following Saturday. I knew because the date still existed in my phone even though I no longer managed the family calendar. "We're having dinner at Bellini's," she said. "That sounds nice. I would like you to come." The wording was careful. "Who's going?" "You if you want. Your father, Nate and Priya, Marlene. That's all." "No people from Nate's office?" Rebecca was busy. I was silent. "That was a joke," she said. "I'm still evaluating it. I thought it was good. It was reckless." She laughed, then turned serious. 7 o'clock. I made the reservation. "Do you need me to bring anything?" There was a pause. In the past, that question would have produced a list before I finished asking. "No," she said. "Just yourself." The answer was so perfect I distrusted it. "Did Aunt Marlene tell you to say that?" She suggested it. I knew it, but I agreed. That counts. On Saturday, I arrived at Bellini's at 7:03. I did not arrive early to check the reservation, bring flowers to the hostess, or make sure the table was suitable for Mom's shoulder. I carried one wrapped gift and my purse. The hostess led me to a round table near the window. Everyone else was there. Mom wore red and had both arms out of the sling. Dad had on the boat shoes, apparently prepared for emotional evacuation. Aunt Marlene was already drinking wine. Priya sat beside Nate, the sapphire ring on her hand, but no wedding date attached to it. There were 7 chairs, 7 place settings, 7 cards. Bellini's did not normally use place cards. Mom had made them herself from plain white cardstock. Mine was between Priya and Dad. I stopped behind the chair. Mom saw me looking. "I know it's a little much," she said. "It's exactly the correct amount of much," Aunt Marlene announced. Dad stood to hug me. Priya squeezed my hand. Nate rose and pulled my chair back. The gesture was awkward. We both knew it was symbolic, which made it worse. "I can sit down by myself," I said. "I know." He released the chair. I sat. Mom watched me, eyes bright. She did not ask whether I understood what the card meant. She did not ask me to reassure her. "I saved you a place," she said. "I see it." Dinner was not magical. Aunt Marlene sent her wine back because she said it tasted like a wet basement. Dad ordered veal, then spent 10 minutes regretting it on ethical grounds. Priya and Nate disagreed quietly about whether they had confirmed a counseling appointment. Mom complained that the restaurant was too cold, and everyone except me immediately offered a jacket. Nate told a work story that went on too long. Halfway through, he caught my eye. "I'm doing it again, aren't I?" "Yes." He finished in one sentence. Mom asked about Winston. I told them about an adult patient who had insisted his recliner counted as medical equipment because he'd bought it from a man named Doc. Dad laughed until he coughed. When the entrees arrived, Mom discovered the kitchen had put cream sauce on her salmon after she requested it on the side. She looked at the plate. Then she looked at me. I felt the old mechanism engage. I would catch the server, explain the issue without making Mom seem demanding, and make sure the corrected dish arrived before everyone else finished. Mom opened her mouth, stopped. Then she raised her own hand. "Excuse me," she said to the server. "I'm sorry, but I asked for the sauce on the side." The server apologized and took the plate. Nobody clapped. Nobody announced growth. Dad passed Mom the bread basket while she waited. Her new plate arrived 6 minutes later. The evening survived. After dinner, Dad asked the server to take a photograph. She held out her hand for the phone, and I automatically started to rise. Mom touched my wrist. "You're in it," she said. I sat back down. The server took 3 pictures. In the first, Dad's eyes were closed. In the second, Aunt Marlene was talking. In the third, none of us looked perfect, but all 7 chairs were occupied. When the check came, Mom did not let me calculate anyone's share. When we stood to leave, Nate did not hand me his jacket or ask me to carry the leftover box. Priya slipped her arm through mine as we walked toward the door. Outside, the evening was warm and smelled faintly of rain. Mom hugged me carefully, though her shoulder no longer required it. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Not thank you for helping. Not thank you for making it work. Thank you for coming." As everyone moved toward the parking lot, I looked back through the restaurant window. A busser was clearing our table. He lifted the place cards one by one and dropped them into his tray. Mine had a small ring from the bottom of my water glass. For once, I had left a mark by sitting still.